All right, good evening, everyone, and welcome to the Town of Wakefield Board of Appeals meeting for Wednesday, August 18th, 2021. We'll start with a roll call of board members. Dave Hatfield, Chair, present. Chip Tarbell.
Here.
Jim McBain.
Here.
Amy Wall.
Here.
Tom Lucy.
Here.
Greg McIntosh.
Here.
Mike Feely. Oh, Mike. You're on mute, but we see you.
Here.
Thank you, Mike. And we know Joe Pride has been excused for the evening. Okay, with that, Amy, if you wouldn't mind, we'll move on to the reading of the legal notice.
Sure thing. Consistent with the governor's orders extending certain provisions of the open meeting law, every effort will be made to allow the public to view and or listen to the meeting in real time. Persons who wish to do so are invited to click the following link. If you do not have a camera or microphone on your computer, you may use the following dial-in number: 1-301-715-8592. Meeting ID 830-3341-9638, passcode 827728. Please only use dial-in or computer and not both, as audio feedback will distort the meeting. This meeting will be audio and video recorded. 1, continued hearings. 2, 22-5, 22-6, Andrew Bosco and Jennifer Bosco, trustees, TRS. Application for a variance under Article 6, Section 190-34 and Table 2 of the Wakefield zoning bylaw to allow an addition to a single-family dwelling application for a determination and or finding with respect to a continuation and extension of a non-conforming uses under Article 9, Section 190-50A to allow an addition to a single-family dwelling. The property is shown as map 14, lot parcel 032/D26 of the assessor's map and is located at 6 Cristofaro Street. 322-7 Wakefield Donuts, Inc. Application for a modification of previously granted special permits and variances to allow external updates, including modernization of signage and construction of an additional drive-up window. The property is shown as map 39A, lot parcels 105-014 of the assessor's map and is located at 518 Salem Street. Board of Appeals.
Thank you, Amy.
You're welcome.
Okay, we've received requests on a couple of the matters on our agenda tonight, so we'll take those up first. Administratively, again, in case anyone's here for these hearings. So letter from Attorney Brian McGrail dated today, August 18th, 2021, regarding 62 Foundry LLC at 62 and 76 Foundry Street, case numbers 2140, 41, and 42. Requesting that we continue the matter to the September 8th meeting and that we're still in the process of finalizing matters with the town engineer. Let this letter also confirm that the applicant is hereby extending the time for the board to render and file any decisions until October 31st, 2021.
Move that we continue.
Second.
Any discussion? And accepting that we're extending the hearing. So it's probably sort of a two-part. Okay. Regular voting members and Tom. All in favor, Chip?
Yes.
Amy?
Yes.
Jim?
Yes.
Tom?
Yes.
And I vote yes, so that's unanimous. So if anyone's here for 62 Foundry LLC, that'll be next heard on September 8th.
Hey, Dave.
Yes.
I noticed a hand is up. I don't know if you want to just explain how the meeting works to the public that may be here for the first time.
Okay. There's also no name there, but I'm not sure who this is, but your hand is up. We're now, the board will take each application in turn, and depending on the nature of the discussion, we'll potentially open it up to public testimony, but unlike town council or perhaps other boards, we don't take public testimony up front. So I don't know what your question pertains to. Can you identify yourself?
Hello, this is Leonard Hunzelman. Gave my name initially, but I guess it didn't go through. This is my first call in via phone or computer for that matter. jump right to it. My question would be, Douglas Heath was scheduled tonight, and I don't believe he got anything in. I'm a neighbor to his south of Butter. Not scheduled. I would like to leave the meeting. Thank you.
Okay, we're going to get to that matter momentarily if you just want to hang on for a moment.
Thank you.
Okay. Next correspondence is also from Attorney Brian McGrail dated today, August 18, 2021, regarding SGD Management Group LLC at 9799 Water Street, Wakefield, case numbers 21-43 and 44, requesting that we continue this matter to September 8th, 2021, and that they're still in the process of working on revisions requested by the Wakefield Municipal Gas and Light Department.
I move that we continue this here until then. Do we
Second.
need to extend the time frame, Dave?
On this one, I don't believe so. It has not been requested at this time. Brian, do you happen to
Okay.
know where we
No.
currently stand? Or are
No,
we good?
those are special permits that deadline doesn't apply.
So we have like 90 days after we actually close the hearing, right? So,
That's right.
Sorry, thank you.
Yep.
Second.
Thank you. Any discussion on the motion?
Is this the
Anybody?
same reason that they keep continuing?
If they have an issue
Brian?
basically with the design and the power cables, that's all.
Okay.
So yes,
Yeah, that's a reason. Mr. McBain was appointed by the board to look into the setback from the electric lines, and we're still working on it. We actually have a Zoom meeting tomorrow with the light department.
Okay. Thank you.
Any other discussion? All right.
Yes,
Amy,
Yes.
Jim,
yes,
Tom,
yes,
and I vote yes. So that too is unanimous. And finally, we received correspondence on July 28, 2021 from Douglas Heath, also signed by Allison Simcox at 28 Stedman Street, requesting to withdraw without prejudice their petition regarding a residential property variance, case number 22-2, for a kitchen expansion at 28 Stedman Street, Wakefield, Mass. So we need a motion to accept
I
that.
move that we accept their choice to withdraw without prejudice.
Second.
Thank you. Any discussion on that motion? Okay, same voting members. Chip,
Yes,
Amy,
Yes.
Jim,
yes,
Tom,
yes,
and I vote yes. So if anyone was here for Stedman, as that the gentleman up front said he was, if he's still here, that has been withdrawn without prejudice. That variance is now, and that application is now off the table for the ZBA at this time. Okay, so those were the administrative things wanted to do up front. We also do have a couple other matters, as board members probably saw on the agenda. I would suggest that maybe we take them up front. They're expected to be quick, and perhaps if those folks are waiting around, sometimes that they can wait till the wee hours, that we might take them up front and perhaps get them off the table, and then we can proceed into the other matters that take a bit longer to adjudicate. So that's okay with board members?
Mhm.
Okay.
Yep.
So the first one on the list is 19-12, 13, and 14 at 291 Salem Street, discussing minor mods and a certificate of occupancy.
Right, if I may, Mr. Chair.
Sure, Brian, welcome.
For the record, Attorney Brian McGrail, representing the applicants on this matter. There's been an ongoing matter before the board. The board might remember that you authorized the issuance of temporary certificate of occupancy for the front house on these two dwellings at 289, 291 Salem Street, because some of the drainage had to be redesigned and approved by the town engineer, and then installed, and then the landscaping had to be completed. But the house was under agreement. The folks had nowhere to live in, and this is also under the jurisdiction of the planning board. And they authorized the same to basically tell the building inspector that there was no issue with a temporary certificate of occupancy, all with the anticipation that the redesign would take place, a minor redesign, and then it would actually be constructed, and an as-built plan would be submitted and approved by the town engineer, and then the landscaping would be completed. That has all happened on these properties. The redesign was engineered by Sullivan Engineering. It was approved by Eric Sherman of the town engineering department. It was installed under the inspection and I guess really the supervision of Eric Sherman, who saw all phases of this installation go in. The frosting was put on the cake with the landscaping, and the hydro seed has actually been done, and it is finished. And Eric has signed off. He sent a letter to the board to that effect. Paul Finocchio has submitted an as-built plan that Eric has signed off on. And Mr. McBain, on behalf of the board, who was designated, I believe, did a site visit to confirm that everything is finished as was required by the board, including the landscaping and the hydro seed. So what we're requesting, assuming that the board agrees with everything I've said, is for the board to accept the as-built plan, recognize it as a minor modification to any discrepancies that it has with the site plan as approved, and to authorize the chair to convey to the building inspector that the board is satisfied that all their requirements have been met, which was a condition prior to issuing the certificate of occupancy. I anticipate we'll be at the planning board Tuesday night to accomplish the same thing. And I think the building inspector is ready to move forward, and then a closing can occur and these folks can own their homes.
Okay, thanks, Brian. Jim, do you want to add anything to that as the designated?
No, I was out there the other day and checked the planting, all right? Other than a few plants being moved around, given site conditions and like, it's all there, it's all done. From our point of view, basically, this should be accepted. The town obviously has dealt with the drainage, so I won't comment on that because we had, in the spring, we had that meeting with the town and ourselves basically walking the site. So other than that, I think we're fine. We should be fine with this.
Okay, thanks. We just did get the letter from Eric Sherman today in an email. And Gail, I don't think we even have the file. We'll print it and make sure that the updated plans they sent to get stamped and in the file. But the letter at the bottom does say it still needs to be hydroseeded, plants need to be reset, and sprinkler heads need to be adjusted. So is this letter, even though it's dated today, perhaps reflective of a visit prior to today? And
Yeah, I think
you're
that
saying
letter
now
was
it's
last
done?
week.
Okay,
Because I have that letter. What's the date on the letter, Dave?
it says August 18th.
I can tell you that I went by tonight. The hydro seeding has been done. The sprinkler systems were on. The ground was wet. I took the as-built. It appears to be correct.
Okay, so those are updates since perhaps he penned the memo, even though it's dated today. It may have been based on his information prior to today.
The hydro seed went in the day before I was out there, so.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Well, thank you for that additional information. Any other comments or questions, board members, on this?
Yeah, real quick. So you're asking us to say that it is a minor modification, right, Brian? Like what, I guess I'd ask Jim then, what is the actual modifications? And so everyone can actually intelligently vote on this.
They're just basically moving some plants around, particularly since the building inspector asked them to put some railings up along some sections, basically. So that changed slightly, but the plants are all there. So the only thing we have to let the building department know so they can release occupancy basically would be that we're satisfied with the work done at this point. And assumingly the same will happen, or in this memo, the same is happening from the town as well. So that should be all that's needed for them to give a C of O on the project.
But Greg was asking what were the modifications?
Yeah,
Well,
so
Weren't you, Greg?
Yeah. So we can actually
Okay, so
understand if it is
So
minor.
mostly it's in front of the back building. There's a retaining wall near the front doorway, basically, that has a set of steps, and then that retaining wall has a bunch of planting. And if you look at where that planting, along that retaining wall, it acted like a big drip area, basically, and it sort of extended itself.
Yeah.
But some of those plants basically have been moved up next to the next retaining wall, which is a set of steps going down to the to the asphalt driveway. So it gives it a continuation basically at the same time.
Greg,
So
if I
it's
can-
all landscaping, though. I know there was
No,
talk about
it's not all
redoing.
that. Greg, can I make this real simple, Jim?
Yeah, please.
The as-built that we're accepting
Yep.
modifies a number of items, landscaping, drainage, all things that have been supervised by the town and requested by the town. The original drainage didn't work. So they had to redesign the drainage. So
Yep,
the
I remember that.
as-built is as it's built.
Oh,
which
I understand
means-
what it is. Are
No,
you
no, so I'm
satisfied
just
that it's
saying,
minor
what we're
modifications?
modifying is the original site plan to match the as-built.
And I guess I should have been more clear. You're comfortable that it's a minor modification. I know we had,
We made
Earlier-
that decision months ago. That what they needed to do was a minor
yeah,
modification,
but they had changed what they needed to do about 4 different times before that. So just-
about 5 or
just
6.
asking.
Yeah,
Yeah, so just asking.
yeah, it's done now,
That's-
so,
Got
Yeah.
it. All I needed.
yeah,
Perfect.
okay.
We don't have to crack our heads on this anymore, please.
Yeah.
So we have, I believe, 2 as-built plans that were sent to us, sort of a plot plan, site plan dated March 5th, and one that shows updated landscape plantings dated August 2nd,
Correct.
along with Eric Sherman's letter. So we're being asked to just confirm that those as-built plans are accepted as minor mods as previously discussed. And you'd authorize me to go to send a building inspector a letter saying we're satisfied that our conditions have been met.
And to state that more thoroughly, that August 2nd as-built is only for the grading and drainage.
Right.
Don't look at it for planting because it's not correct by planting, basically. But I'm telling you that what's out there is fine. It's closer to what was on the original drawings than it is to anything else.
The landscaping plan never changed, and that was complied with.
So I guess we'll need these printed. Brian, I don't know if we need, Gail, we need large copies for the file.
Yep.
Something we can stamp as being final, right?
Correct.
And then we would include them with the letter, with this board's, with my letter, assuming we proceed with a vote, but assuming that's the way it goes, yes, that's what we will need. Okay, any other discussion on this one? Okay,
I move that we accept the as-built plan to the extent necessary as a minor modification and approve the changes to the site plan to be shown on the as-built plan and to authorize the chair to notify the building inspector that the board is satisfied with all the conditions that we had set on this property.
Second,
thank you. Any discussion on that motion? All right, same voting members, Chip,
Yes.
Amy,
yes.
Jim,
Yes.
Tom?
Yes.
And I vote yes. All right, so that's unanimous. And Brian, we'll work offline on that memo and get these things buttoned up.
Yes.
Thank you. Next one, 19-71, 1188 Main Street, Solomine Realty Trust, discuss minor mods. So,
Good evening. My name is Paul Piera. I'm the general contractor on site for the project. I guess there was a misconfusion with due to COVID and submitting different plans. I'm going to share my screen because I think it's important that you see the request for the modification, well, the approved set of plans and the request for modification. All right, let's see what we got. Okay. Which I don't know if everyone can see that.
not yet.
Not yet. Okay. Let's try this again.
Brian, were you also on this original application?
Original.
The original, okay.
All right, trying to open them up here and clearly they're not coming through.
When you're given the option to share, can you pick your whole screen, or are you trying to pick individual windows or apps?
Basically, when I'm sharing, it's giving me Dropbox, Microsoft One, Google Drive box, or Microsoft Share as point.
Let's
And
see if I have to give you any additional.
I got PDF unknown, white box.
I mean, everyone in the meeting room should be allowed to share. That has been enabled. Just seeing if there's.
Okay, because I mean, I do have the I've got the PDF on my screen. Actually, this is the large screen. I mean, I'm looking at the plan right now, so.
All participants can share. Yeah, I'm not sure what's.
It
Maybe
says,
try to
right,
close it down completely and then reopen it.
the file?
Mhm.
Sure, let's try that.
What day did this get sent to us? So I can,
I sent it to Gail last Wednesday. I believe she forwarded it to everyone on the committee when I
Oh, let's see. I have a copy that I've saved locally. Hold on. See if we can move this along.
all right, let's see if I can. Here we go. Can everyone see this or
Not yet.
no? Yeah.
Mm,
All right.
so I'm sharing. Can you see this?
All right. If you can go down to page number 5. Sorry about that. Right there. Okay. This here is the proposed minor modification. And if we look at the first floor, so on the bottom right-hand side, the first floor windows. Okay. Yep. We'll enlarge
Just making it bigger so we can.
Yeah. Okay. So right where your hand is to the left, this window here, we're just moving it over. Okay. It used to be over closer to the main house. Reason why we're moving it over is to ask for moving it out of a closet into a hallway. The minor modification that we're requesting is the transients on the top of these windows here. On the original approved plan, these were not on the original plan. I know these were drawn up for, as it states, for construction bidding. The owner actually thought that these were the actual plans that we were supposed to be working off of and would have already been submitted to the zoning board. We just found out last week that they have not. So that's the minor modifications, pretty much on the second floor, all the windows to have transients on it, and just move one window. And if you don't mind, I'm sorry, David, is it?
Mhm.
Are you controlling this? I'm sorry. If you can just enlarge that screen again on the back side of the house. On the back side, so you got the 2 doors.
Which
Next to the,
one?
oh, I'm sorry, on the left-hand side, this section here on the left-hand side. Yep.
Yep.
Next to the 2 doors, on the original plan, there was only one window on each side, so they're adding in a second window to match this existing drawing right here.
So those are the windows to the right they're adding?
They're adding to the right of the door, each individual door. So on the first floor to the right, they're adding a window. On the second floor, they're adding a window also right to the right-hand side of the door.
And changing the size of the original window.
Only on the second floor, they're adding the transients as this was drawn up.
And the window downstairs is a different size window. It's moved from 1 to 2.
It's moved
And
from 1
it's
to
changed
2.
sizes.
That I'd have to verify if it was.
I can verify it for you.
Okay.
So can you still see my screen? I'm looking at
Listed
the,
as a 3442 and you're going to a 26.
2642. So yes. Okay.
So you're
thank
going
you.
from 1 to 2 and changing the size.
Correct.
So do we have
That's
a
on-
list of all the changes being requested? Or are we just supposed to
Um,
figure them out by comparing plans?
The list was not requested from me. I'll be more than glad to put a list together on, the different size windows, what was originally proposed to you on the first hearing meeting, and what we're asking to change now. I'll be more than glad to do that if you would like.
Well, unless you can be real specific on what the changes are, and it sounds to me we're trying to figure them out as we go.
Yeah, I mean, it's confusing because I thought I could share the screen and I can't, but the only modifications, minor modifications, is we're adding the transients on the top of these windows here. Okay, which I'll have to.
so this was the original one,
Correct.
right? For example, that what we're just
They had
looking at.
26 by 42. So on the top, we're only adding it. It's a 26 by 42 with a transient on top. We're adding another 26 by 42 next to the door. The door is being moved over. The first floor window is the one that the other gentleman mentioned, that we changed from a 34 to 42 to a 24 by 42.
And you're adding a second one.
And we're adding a second one, so we're making it smaller and adding a second one, correct?
Dave, can you go
And
to the first page we talked about too? Because it looks like there's more changes than just that. It looks
Yep.
on the, I think
Yep.
he said, only one window is moving, but it looks like they're moving on both floors.
Yeah, I'm seeing something similar where I can't just share my whole screen. Select a window or app. Why can't I just select all my whole screen?
yeah,
You're looking at
that's,
sheet 5.
No, it's two different PDFs, but if I could share my screen, then I could just toggle between them. Let me see, show.
Well, Dave, how do you want to do this? Do you want to just do it via one plan versus the other, or do you want to list the differences?
It would be a lot easier if we had a list of the differences. So it was very clear. I mean, I think I get it, but I hear what you're saying. It's
right. Okay. So
Well, we want to keep this thing moving, so.
I don't think all the differences have even been talked about right now either, though, because it.
No,
like
they
I
haven't.
said,
As
No,
you're
so
saying,
that's
it-
my point. Like, I think we need the list, because if it adds up to 100 differences, how do we know that's then minor? Is it really on us to compare in the middle of a meeting? Or even before the meeting?
well, if you don't mind me interrupting, the only modifications that we're doing are the windows. So, I mean, I understand each individual window could be considered an individual line item. Other than that, the size of the structure is maintaining the same. We're just moving one out of a closet into an actual hallway, we'll say. The other one was basically over a staircase. So moving it closer to the room, actual grand room. But what I'm referring to is it's windows. It's not like I'm building a bigger structure or anything. So I can list each individual window if that's what the board would request.
I think it's worth basically, and you can decide how to provide this, basically, is that each one of these windows that have been either resized or relocated should be clouded with a note next to it, so it's clear as to what we allowed.
Okay.
I
And
mean,
you're
it's
moving the door.
obviously on the second floor, you've got, clear stories above, and you change the size of the window, and then the windows down below, you've changed the size and added a window there, and then on the side, those windows that were originally on the drawings were closer to the original structure have slid back to be more of a pair, basically, on the side wall. So, somehow you've got to delineate that. You can write it down, but to me, the clearest thing would be to cloud it all and put notes on the elevations, basically clearly indicate what's going on in each case.
Okay, absolutely.
Okay. Any other comments, board members? Sounds like we're going to table this one for the next hearing. So you'll send us an updated plan with that, any change from what we approved clearly delineated, and then we can more clearly go down the, listing it would help too, but at least, as Jim said, a plan that shows all the changes with some sort of notation.
Absolutely.
Okay.
All right,
We
thank you
want
very
that
much.
The Friday before, right?
Yeah, so if possible, if you can send us, the week before like this was, I appreciate that. We do appreciate.
I'm sorry, the next meeting is 9/8, is that correct?
Yes,
Yes.
Okay, absolutely.
All right. Thank you. Appreciate. Okay.
I move that we continue this matter to 9/8.
It's
Okay.
under other matters anyway, so I don't think we need an official vote, actually.
We don't?
No, it's not a public hearing per se. It's just under other matters,
Okay,
but that's fine. They will come back on the other matter part of the agenda in a couple of weeks. Okay, so the other one is 168 Albion Street, aka 178 Albion Street. Provide a construction update. So, Brian, do you want to just take this one, or do you want me to offer any intro, or? You're on mute, Brian.
I didn't know I was on mute. I think Mark Schwarzberg and Tom Knott. Mark, are you on?
Come on, Brian.
Oh, great.
Hi, everybody.
Hi, Mark.
Mark.
And Tom Knott's on too. So, yeah, so Tom Knott, Mark Schwarzberg are both on from NRP. And the reason we're here is before the summer, the board raised an issue with the condition of Foundry Street and, maintenance on it during construction, which I think everybody acknowledged was addressed very well. And then the board asked if wanted an update on the status of the street being opening before Labor Day, before school started. So the chair reached out and asked us to be here tonight to give that update, and we are. So as you all know, it was a very difficult summer for construction, a lot of rain, bad weather. So it sounds like I'm setting a table to make an excuse, but I'm not. The good news is that the street will be open by Labor Day. To NRP's credit, they worked a lot of overtime hours on good days. They worked on sunny Saturdays to make sure that they met the goal. And they have met the goal that Foundry Street will be reopened. They've been working very cooperatively with the police department, the police chief, building inspector, DPW, also the town administrator's office. And there are going to be certain days that they're going to have to partially close or close it. But they would give notice to all of those people that would have to approve it. And if and when they do, they will provide police details and probably try to do most of that if they have to do it. Tom talked about doing it on a Saturday because there is some work on the building that's going to need, that will be a safety concern, some brickwork that has to be done with heavy material. But as far as opening the street on a daily basis, that will be done by Labor Day. And I think that was a goal that was set by the board and it has been met. Or it will be met.
I was going to say it will be. We're not there yet. Yeah.
Not there yet, but it will be.
Well, that's good to hear. Again, I appreciate you appearing and giving us this update. Board members, this was, as you know, it was in May. We reviewed this. Did anyone else have any other questions for the folks while they're here?
No,
I just want to make sure that the street, how is it going to be blocked off for people walking to school once school opens? Is it going to be blocked off or is it going to be open all the way?
Street's gonna be opened.
Sidewalks and everything?
Mark, you're on mute.
Yeah, the street will be open for pedestrian traffic. And like Brian said, any closure that does need to happen, we'll make sure that it's all coordinated. Everybody understands the days, the times in advance. But otherwise, besides those days, it will be open for pedestrian and vehicular traffic.
And if it was closed, Mark, you'd do police details, correct?
Absolutely. There'll be police details, and Tom has already been in discussion with the police department about that in advance.
And those closures are expected to be short term, not we're open for Labor Day and then a month
Yep.
later, we're gonna close for another month.
Absolutely.
It's a temporary, like, we need a
Yep.
day to do some work and, okay.
Right. And it's really mostly a safety concern, right? We've had a really good safety record on the project and we'd like to maintain that.
Other
so
board
are we,
members? Go ahead, John.
yeah, so are we saying that both sidewalks on either side are open? Or are we just saying the garage side is open and the other one basically is cordoned off?
At least for now, immediately, it will be the garage side that will be the usable side, as some materials and things will still need to be kept, or there still will be some debris kept against our building side. But that will work its way through, and both sides will be open in short order.
Thank you.
Anyone else? Okay. Well, thanks for your time. We appreciate you coming in.
Thank you very much.
Look
Have a good
forward to the
evening,
continued
everybody.
progress. All right, you bet.
Thank you.
Anytime you want to stop by the building, let us know. We're happy to give a tour.
Thank you.
Okay.
Okay, those are the other matters on our agenda this evening, so we'll now circle back to our first continued hearing. 21-37 Crescent Commons Development LLC at 44, 46, and 48 Crescent Street.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. For the record, Attorney Brian McGrail representing Crescent Commons LLC. With me tonight are the Bocellis, Steve and Joe. They're on here somewhere, who are representatives of the LLC, and Peter Sandors, who is our architect. Where we stand, to refresh the board's memory, last we met, this project stood at 45 units. We have presented some details working with the subcommittee as far as deliveries and trash removal off of Crescent Hill. Those aspects were not satisfactory to your subcommittee members. They did not think that they worked from a topography and a practical perspective. They also asked us to look at an additional unit reduction to deal with some massing at the top of the building as you face it on the right-hand side, and also for the possibility of providing some more on-site parking. So that's kind of where we had left it with your board. We were directed to continue to work with the subcommittee. It was stated that the subcommittee was not only to look at architecture, but other aspects of the project. You may recall that it was also encouraged that potentially Lieutenant Anderson, on behalf of the Traffic Advisory Committee as the chair, could participate in further subcommittee meetings. So since that time through the summer, we've actually had 2 subcommittee meetings with Ms. Wall and Mr. McBain. And Lieutenant Anderson was able to participate in both of those. And also your 40B consultant, Ezra Glenn, who was on tonight, was able to participate in the final one. He was due to conflict with vacation, he didn't make the first. But during those subcommittee meetings, I thought there was a lot of positive substantive discussion on concepts and ideas. And that's what we want to talk to you about tonight. After the last subcommittee meeting, the board representatives thought it was time to bring it back to the board. Also, Lieutenant Anderson, as the board knows, I hesitate to speak for anybody, but I can say, and you can watch the tape, I think it was a positive reaction by him with the changes that we are proposing on the project. And I think he was encouraged by where we are after the subcommittee meetings. He did say, however, that he wants to bring it back to the entire TAC. Obviously he can't speak for all of them. So I think that is going to occur, I believe, in early September, that it will go back before the entire Traffic Advisory Committee. So what we've done, and I'll bring up kind of a revised floor plan, and then, Peter can talk about the architectural aspects, and I'm sure you may want to hear, obviously, from your board members and probably Ezra too. What we've done is we've done a redesign of the building from the perspective of how it will function in the parking layout. So I'm going to try to see if I can share this. Great. Okay. So right off the bat, to give us some more working room, what we did is we've reduced it now, or we're proposing to reduce it from 45 units down to 42 units. Originally started at 56, 45, and now we're talking about 42 units. And as far as the functionality of the building goes, you'll see kind of two floor plans. This is the upper garage, which is off of Crescent Hill. This is the lower garage, which is off of Crescent Street. And what we've done is, if you may recall, what we were proposing before in this area, we had the package delivery off of Crescent Hill. We had the trash room off of Crescent Hill. So it was going to generate more traffic for deliveries and trash removal, et cetera, off of Crescent Hill. And one of the suggestions through the subcommittee meetings was to relocate that and put it on the Crescent Street side. So now what we've done is blow this up. We're proposing to put a package room over here, where there's a temporary loading area. So deliveries can be made right into the package room, and the trash is stored here with the recycle here, that it will be taken out right out Crescent Street side for trash removal. The other part of this, let me go back to the Crescent Hill side. One of the subcommittee members made the suggestion that only resident parking should be off of the Crescent Hill side of the building. So we have 28 parking spaces in this upper garage. What we're proposing, and this would all be done through various conditions of the comprehensive permit, that this would be resident only. So no visitors would go into this. And this was something that Lieutenant Anderson participated in, this concept, and his comment was he did not want to encourage people visiting the property from having anything to do with Crescent Hill. So this would only be resident parking only, and as you can see, there will be a left-hand turn only out of the garage. So when they come out, they're directed, they go left. Obviously, they live in this building, they're going to know they're dealing with a dead-end street, so there'd be no need to go up there, but it will be a mandatory left-hand turn only, again, with no visitor parking that would be able to go out. With our, let me just, yeah. So the lower level has the remaining parking. So we have a total of 70 parking spaces that we're proposing for the site. 2 outdoor, 1 over here. You can see 1 over here in the Crescent Hill. This would be for somebody that works at the building. Good place to put a maintenance person, keep them out of the way. And then we have 2 outdoor spaces here. And then we have the garage spaces for a total of 70 spaces. This would be for, again, residential parking, and then there would be visitor parking. We're proposing some minimal number of 8.5 by 18 spaces instead of 9 to get as many as we can in here for parking. And so what that does for our parking count, the unit makeup on this project at this point will be 17 one-bedroom units, 22 bedroom, and the required 40B 5 3-bedroom for a total of 42. Again, we were at 45 before. The parking requirements would be, I think it's 65.5. You round that to 66, and we're providing 70 parking spaces for the site. And again, through discussions with the subcommittee and Lieutenant Anderson, we know what concern is for visitor parking. So what my clients are willing to do is to entertain a condition that would guarantee that 10 of the parking spaces in this garage would be for visitor parking, plus the 3 handicaps. So you've got 3 handicap spaces here. So they're actually willing to limit the number of parking spaces through a condition and lease requirements that would, basically say to certain units that you can only have 1 car because you're going to have 1 parking space. They believe through their marketing plan that's very easily maintained, and they will have to maintain it if it's a condition and provide evidence that they're doing so. So what we're committing to is to providing at all times 10 visitor parking spaces plus 3 handicap. If a resident needs a handicap parking space, then we would make their space and assign one of the handicap spaces an assigned handicap space, and it would free up 1 more space for a visitor parking, a regular space for visitor parking. So at all times there will be 13 available with, sometimes a combination of 3 handicap or, maybe 2 handicap and 11 conventional spaces. We also went into the detail of discussing, well, how is it practical to, deal with getting people into the garage that are going to be visitors? And my client is committed, and we will present this in some detail at a future meeting, to a very sophisticated system that all of the units would have access to, with intercoms and automatic door openers from cell phones, so they can, even if they're not in the building, they can let visitors into the garage. They can open that door and explain to them where they go in. The other thing that they've committed to, and I think the police department is happy with this, is a very sophisticated and intense camera system with a minimum of 36 cameras with the potential to go higher, that will have cameras all throughout the garage, on the outside perimeter of the property, that will not go off site to intrude on any neighbors, and actually in all of the common areas of the building. So they'll be able to monitor exactly what is going on. The other thing is management will have control of the door for packages to be able to let people in. There'll be a very intense camera system in the package room to protect it, so people can't just walk in there from off the street. And again, I think that's something the police department will be very pleased with. So I think, as you can see, we're really trying to address the concerns that have been raised throughout this process. We feel that this is a pretty big commitment to reduce to 42 units. This is a struggle for my clients to do this as part of this 40B. The lenders are really squeezing them. It's pretty much at the point that this is the limit, because from a financing perspective, the lender is balking already on the unit count. But they would like to get this done. They feel that this is something that will really enhance the project and also address the concerns that have been raised by your board and various town departments and officials. So that's kind of the site plan change. and, you know, I guess I didn't really go into the trash. So the way the trash will work is the trash truck has plenty of room. They can back right in, do the trash and pull out with no effect on Crescent Hill whatsoever, and no effect on Crescent Street. We really designed this to limit the impact on Crescent Street and Crescent Hill as much as possible, really burdening everything on this side of the building. That I can also share the kind of the architectural. What the subcommittee asked us to do was to have Peter kind of go through where we started on this building from an elevation process to where we are now. So, you know, where it started with its 56 unit iteration and where it is now from the way it's designed and the massing. And then the other thing that Peter did that I'm sure the board would probably like to see, it's something that we really couldn't submit in advance because he has to operate it. It's a 3D model that Mr. McBain asked for because, as you know, he had a concern for one of the units on the top of the building. So he wanted a 3D model done to really be able to get kind of a street view of that model, putting it in, taking it away. So we'd like to share that with the board. And I think that obviously your subcommittee might want to talk about that. So I kind of would like to go to that point now, if I may, Mr. Chair, to allow Peter to share and go through that aspect. And then I'm sure you're going to want to hear from your subcommittee. Is that okay?
That's fine. Amy, Jim, are you fine with, or do you want to pause here and make any other comments or wait till Peter does his part too?
I think let's just see the whole picture.
Okay.
I agree.
Okay.
That's what I thought. Okay. Peter, can you share? Because I know you.
I believe I can.
Yeah.
Let's see. I'll bring up the. Can you guys tell me if you can you see my screen, or do I need to click something? I may need to click something.
Not seeing it
Yeah,
yet.
and what I can add while he's looking at, so what we're anticipating on the parking, so we've got 5 3-bedroom units, so you know those require 2 spaces, so those would take 10, maybe not, because you know through leasing we're thinking that some of those units might not need 2 parking spaces, so we could limit them, but let's assume they do. So 10 parking spaces will go to them. 10 of the 2-bedroom units will get 2 parking spaces. 10 of the 2 bedrooms would be limited to 1 parking space, and all 17 of the 1-bedroom units would get 1 parking space. For a total of 57 out of the 70, leaving 13 indoor spaces available. And the other thing is, you know, as you can see, my client is saying that the indoor spaces go to the visitors, the quality spaces get them off the street and bring them inside the building. So Peter, were you able to load yet? You were.
Yeah, we can see it.
You can see it now. So it's we've kind of enabled this like kind of a history, taking us all the way back to when we originally presented this building, which was 56 units, very vertical. I'm sure you all remember that. I think this is an important slide showing where we dropped almost 25 feet out of that building. And this is when we started to change the massing of the building below. This is a model of that original building. And then again, where the building stands now. Just wanted to toggle back and forth with that. But so again, that original massing model and then the massing model of the building now, it's drastically reduced. This model talked about to Jim and to Amy about this unit that sits here in the back, the mansard that now hides the unit in the back, as well as the decks that happen up here. And when we see a little bit further, the HVAC, here's the model where we can see the front unit and that rear unit that kept coming into question. We did a couple of things with this unit. There were two units here initially. We took about 20 feet out of it and pushed it to the left so it stayed away from the right facade. There is a deck up in here. There's a deck on the unit that sits in the front. All of these are shielded, if you will, by the upper portion of the mansard, which also hides the HVAC units, both at this level and the upper level, and hides a good portion of the of the elevator mechanicals as well. I could go through each floor plate, but I believe the intent is to say today, stay more with the elevation, how the building's kind of working, how we work through not only breaking the building horizontally by having it undulate back and forth, but also breaking the building vertically, creating different segments to it as you come down Crescent Hill. It's breaking down, showing some stone in the lower garage, showing stone in so that it breaks the materials as well. Showing the right elevation, how the door into the lower garage happens, and then the door into the trash room. Showing how the upper units are, I believe I have an image of this, but showing how the upper units are hidden if you're on Crescent Street, how you really can't see them. Here is the massing model laid into the surrounds of the neighborhood. It's done crudely, but just to give an idea of how the building is coming into similar size to the houses that are there in terms of heights and top of roof, etc. Here is the view I wanted to show. So if you're coming up Crescent Hill, this is what
Crescent Street, Peter.
Crescent Street. I'm sorry. Thank you, Brian. Coming up Crescent Street, this is what you see of that unit that kept coming into question as to whether it should be there or not. It's virtually invisible because of the way the building sits on the site. And I think also from Crescent Street, this is a view take our photo, if you will, of image taken about 200 feet away from the building, and still shows that the units up on the upper fourth floor are pushed back and pretty much hidden from the street facade.
But you made an adjustment to do that, right, Peter? That's where we lost a unit up there.
That's correct. We pulled that unit that was on the far right. It was 2 units. We made it 1, and we pulled it in away from the right hand facade. I believe it was around 20 feet. So that's what helps to keep it hidden. At one point, I believe as we were working through this, and it was something Amy had mentioned, this section of the building got very flat and horizontal, and I believe by creating another break in the facade in this here, it used to just break here, then we broke it again, and then we got the mansard to be more cohesive. So we did a couple of things there, and then pulled the unit back in here and the unit back to the far right, so that this image now shows the way it is currently. And the unit count reduction also helped with that. This is, let me just check my notes, but I believe we've hit the highlights of what we did there. I wanted to, well, this unit shows that when this, this view of the 3D model shows that mansard, after the skirt breaks, will drop down approximately 4 feet. So that allows us to hide all the HVAC units, both up in this level and also on the lower 3rd floor of the right-hand side of the building.
But Peter, the far right of the building on Crescent is the front face, basically. That is also broken, as it's shown in this rendering, basically, that it sticks out where the 2 windows are and stacked. Yes, yep. That sticks out, so it also breaks that mansard when it goes around the corner.
That's right. We took this language and brought it.
Yeah.
This corner of the building as well. That's right.
Like a separate turret.
Yep. I think we show it better in the CAD.
Yep.
Again, we were we were blocking out that model to get a better feel, and we're in this slideshow, we're not doing it, but we were toggling the unit being there and the unit being removed to convince ourselves that, and I think the model did a really good job of that, showing that we could keep those units there and keep them well hidden up on the 4th floor. See the best image too. I think that's probably, again, that piece, it does come forward. That's right in this corner. But that, I think that's as a massing model, I think that's a pretty good, decent representation of what that building will look like.
So Peter, while this is on screen, the lower
Yeah.
parking entrance on the right,
Yes.
that goes all the way underneath. And where's the upper parking? Is it basically where that covered porch area? I mean, is
So
it-
after,
is that
correct,
level?
after you come around and go up Crescent Hill, it's about 20 feet in to Crescent Hill, you take a right into the building. So this is actually parking. This is all, this porch sits in front of the parking level above.
The top level parking. Got it.
Correct. Yep.
So in a way, to your point, Dave, is all those windows that you see along that level are all phony. So we're gonna have to deal with what that looks like eventually. But more to the point, I think we reached a point where we think we've solved a lot of the issues, basically, and we didn't want to get into material choices or details or stuff like that. So at this point, it's about massing, it's about parking, it's about flow, basically. That's where we need any feedback from the members basically here to talk about. And of course, we'll get that from the neighbors as well. There are things that still will need studying, such as an elevator override and stuff like that, but we'll deal with that in our next session, basically, depending on how we come out of this. One of the things we looked at in the massing, and it shows here, is that this building actually is, instead of being one huge mass, has been broken up, as Peter says, but undulating as it goes down the hill, but it also steps down the hill. And the building that's in the back, in the far back, basically, is one floor lower than what you see here. So it steps into the neighborhood at the same time. All the time, the grading is basically running down the hill on this thing. So we basically have created a turn of the century building, not unlike Brightview, really, on this site, which would be more in keeping with way the town was going at one time. And it's not like some of the projects that we have approved on Salem Street, which are modern, and just would not fit basically anywhere in really in town in this particular area. It seems right. And as much as others would say it shouldn't be here at all, that's a different argument, basically. But at this point, within the tasks that we've given, we think we're at a place where we need comment back from the board itself to help us move forward with what we've done. Basically, let's give it a crit from what we've done so we can move ahead. Amy, you want to say anything?
I mean, I think you pretty much summed it all up. The one thing that when we were talking about that unit up on the top there, taking it out, putting it in, the big thing that stood out for me with that part was that you couldn't really tell the difference, whether it was there or not. So I say kind of leave it there. I'm still looking at it, I'm not 100% sold on everything yet, but I'm still looking at it with open eyes, and I think we've come a long way from where we started.
Peter, do you have a view? I think you did. Do you have a view of the back of the building? Can you just flip to that?
Yes.
That back section you were just referring to?
Yep.
I think you had an elevation.
We jumped. I'm sorry. This is the rear of the building. This is what Jim was referring to, how the rear segment of the building is a 3-story building. We're proposing some garden areas up above, accessible for all the tenants.
Well, you can see it in the one below, the proposed.
This one.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And what's the height? What's the elevation of that part of the building from grade? Do we know?
I would say around 30 feet.
Yeah, I would too. 30, 32. Some of these units in the back are their doors will they'll be able to walk in and access the unit right from grade. That's what this is showing, some doors. We also took this unit actually and made it an amenity area. So they were thinking of a gym, maybe a flex office space for tenants to use. So they're trying to add some amenity back in. That's actually showing in plan. We called out bike storage. We've talked about some electric car charging stations in the garage.
Okay, thank you. Other board members?
Hey, Dave, it's Tom.
Mm-hmm.
Just got a question about the parking. Did I hear that you're going down to 8.5 foot spots in terms of width? Did I hear Brian say that?
Yes.
Yeah, yep, some of them,
So those are
Tom.
pretty, that's pretty narrow, and I think we just saw over another development. Are you worried that you're going to be able to get all those spots in with, you know, depending on how they construct it with you know, support beams in the garage, that won't cut down the number of parking spots in there from what's being presented tonight?
Yeah, that's a good point, well taken, Tom. We actually talked about that, and so my clients are going to do construction with beams that there'll be no poles that will be affecting any of the parking spaces.
And just other thank you to Amy and Jim for all your hard work. I think it has come a long way, given the task that you had. So I know I appreciate it.
Thanks.
Hi, Dave. It's Mike Feely.
Yes, sir.
One of my, sounds like there's a lot of moving parts to the conditions when this gets done. How do we, I mean, they're conditions, but they seem kind of complicated. And a lot of times people just kind of throw their hands up and say, yeah, whatever, you just go downstairs. My buddy will, how are we going to keep an eye on this and how it works and make sure that it's, it works the way it's supposed to? Is there a management company? Is there a traffic management company? Is there a security company? I mean, how's this work? Or is it just an honor system?
As far as,
I mean, you gave us 4 or 5 things that said, well, we're going to have these spaces be visitor spaces. And if you're a resident parker, you can only go upstairs. And if you're not, you can go, I'm paraphrasing, but it sounds like a lot of moving parts. And who is overseeing that?
well, the upper garage is only going to have access to the residents that can park in there and have assigned spaces. So nobody's gonna be able to open the door to let a visitor in. They have to, that will not be, they're gonna have to open that themselves because they're the only ones with access. And that's why we did that and came up with that concept. As far as the lower garage where the visitors go, those spaces will be marked visitor. They'll be monitored by camera. And yeah, there'll be a management. The Bocellis are going to manage this building. They're not going to be on site 24/7, but there's going to be an extensive camera system in there. And it would be a condition of your decision that, you know, we'll figure that out. We're capable of figuring that out to put a condition that's going to allow the town to monitor it, to make sure that it's being complied with, evidence that the leases are complying with the number of spaces allowed. Access to, you know, the police are going to have access to the cameras anyways. So, you know, that's how it's going to, you know, and don't forget, you know, these things become self-monitored too, because people, you know, they want those visitor parking spaces open for their visitors, not other people to keep their car. The Bocellis and the management will be on that property every day, so they'll know what's going on.
Some of these, Mike, to your point too, I mean, typically between Brian and I, maybe others, we're keeping a running list. If there's any sort of, yeah, we'll have to park that, remember that as a potential condition. We've got our notes and we'd remember those. Secondly, we're going to do, in all likelihood, some sort of operation and maintenance plan, as we do with all these multifamily developments. It would, if there is an entry system, a camera system that, you know, might have some specs on it and, you know, needs to be monitored, maintained, et cetera. So between the conditions that potentially are in a decision with an operation and maintenance plan, it gives some enforcement behind the things that are being discussed, right? And then, as Brian said, just sort of as a practical matter, some of that will just happen as a matter of course from their management and ongoing usage. But
Okay.
Yeah,
And then through the chair, this is Ezra. Can I just jump in there for one?
actually, yeah, I was gonna ask you if you had anything once we sort of went through the board members.
Sure. This is just because it relates to what the member just asked about, which is a great question. I think that's often, especially for the point of view of the residents, they come, they see these presentations, they hear all these, promises, and then they are concerned, how do we know we're getting that? And, I think you're doing just the right thing, keeping those notes. And then also remember, any changes that you make through this process that can be represented on the plan, you want to do just what you're doing, where you get it on the plan. So at the end, you're approving the plan you saw. And then, typically in any approval, if you get to that point, it would say this approval is conditioned on all the representations as made through this hearing. And that's why this is all, being recorded. There's minutes, so when they say, we will do this, they're saying we will do this. And even if you don't have a condition, you can come back and say, that's what you said. Even better as a condition, I would be nervous if they said something like, well, one thing we could do is such and such, because that's not them saying they will, that's saying it's possible. But I think that, just as you said, having that sort of punch list of all those management plan issues would be great.
And we do try to drive, thank you, Ezra. We do try to drive, and that has been our more recently, as we've gone through these, is to get as much as we can on the plans, because those become the thing of record. Those what turn into a building set. And is less on some sort of decision filed away. But yeah, collectively, they all represent a record of what's been agreed to. Agreed. Yep.
And we numbered the spaces because we wanted you to see the number, but we anticipate that we would label, final site plan would label the visitor parking spaces as visitor.
Thanks, Brian.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, Jim.
through you, Ezra, I'd just be curious to get a quick reaction to what you think, how the process has gone from what you've seen in the past and other projects, and what your kind of thoughts are. I mean, I heard the petitioner say that they're, excuse me, kind of at 42 as their bottom number. Given that, what do you think of the project at this point, and how do you think they've worked with us, the town, and what should we be concerned about, or are we in a pretty good spot?
Sure. Thanks for asking, and I'm happy to weigh in. I actually, this one, I came in a little late, but I've been catching up, and I'm incredibly impressed with how much you've done. I think you have the expertise you need, and you clearly know how to run a process like this. It's gone very smoothly, and that doesn't mean you've just rolled over and stamped things. You've said, these are our concerns. These are the most important ones. Let's work on those first. And it looks like that's resulted in a pretty creative and positive process. There's been some willingness on the developer side to listen to what you're saying and address those issues. And I think what they seem to be saying is they're taking you at face value, that if they address these bigger issues, you can move towards some kind of modified approval. And I think I was really impressed with both Jim and Amy, as well as the lieutenant from the TAC, in terms of focusing on just those issues, the things that really mattered, that are going to affect how well this works. And attention to as much detail as seemed appropriate at this stage, knowing there might be more details later. But I thought the instinct to bring this back to the board at this point was really good. I mean, you basically dealt with the massing, you've looked at it all around in 3 dimensions and got the basic shape. You've looked to make sure that works from an operational point of view, and it seems to address most of the traffic, the parking, the delivery, the public safety concerns. There's some aesthetic things you do want to still look into, but I think, as Jim said, there's no reason worrying about that until we're confident that you have not just the 2 votes from some subcommittee, but enough votes from everyone, and more than just votes, but enough sort of belief that this is moving in the direction you want. So I think you're just where you need to be.
Thank you.
Mr. Chair, it's Greg. I have a question.
Sure.
To go back to, I think in the same vein as Mike Feely had, more specifically though, question on, so I think parking is or parking traffic, cars on the street is really one of the bigger kind of safety issues here. Specifically on from the way I understood it, a condition in the lease that 2-bedroom units only have 1 car or something like that, maybe a 1-bedroom unit. Either way, some units only have 1 car, and it being a condition in the lease. I think the spirit of 40B is to increase housing. Is a 40B project, I have multiple questions about this, whether one, it's even enforceable, like how could we, as a town, if they violate, what the condition would look like, and then how can we as a town force a landlord to, I don't know, evict a tenant if they're breaking the lease. And in that same vein, a 40B project, the spirit of it is to increase housing and not put people out on the street. Is that really something we want to be putting in? You can't have cars to transport yourself, and if you do, we're going to kick you out. Do we really want to put that in the lease? And also from a reality standpoint, I think people are probably just going to sign the lease and say, yeah, we'll just park on the street. We're just not going to try to park in the garage. So I don't know if that's a question or if it really even needs to be added tonight. It just, I don't know, I heard it on the recording too earlier, and hearing it again, it's just a kind of a shocking thing to be putting in a 40B with the spirit to increase housing. But if you have extra cars, we're going to try to kick you out.
Well, we're creating housing. We're limiting cars, and it's not just going to apply to the affordable units. It's going to apply to
understood.
Everybody
Yes, I wasn't
living in
saying
the
that.
building. And we're trying to address a concern. Just if we don't put that condition in, the project still has more parking that's required under our zoning bylaw. We have 4 excess spaces, but in good faith, because this concern has been raised, we're saying we'll put the burden on us and the people that live in the building, instead of potentially, as a concern has been raised by the neighborhood. And this is really a transit oriented type development. My clients are very confident in their market plan that a lot of people that live here are really only going to want to have 1 car. It's going to work for them, and they're going to know going in. They go in, they know it. As far as enforcing it in the lease, yeah, it can be a default under the lease that could cause eviction, but there's other things they can do. They can fine people, gets tacked on to the amounts that they're owed. So there's ways to enforce it. And I don't think it diminishes housing. We're going to have, and I've got to ask Ezra, because I think I know the answer, but he's an expert. I think with the 40Bs, Ezra, I think you round up the 25% to the nearest, the higher number, if it's a fraction. Is that true for affordable units?
I'm not sure about that. I think actually you would round the other way, or there might be a provision.
Nearest whole number?
Yeah, and there might be a provision for sort of like a cash payment to make up for the partial. But I think usually I've seen people give at least 25, 25.
So we're committed to 25%, but my point was, I think no matter what, by reducing from 45 to 42, we're still going to have 11 affordable units.
Right.
So it's not like that. Our reduction is, hey, we'll get rid of 3 units. We're losing affordable units. There's no money to be made. So we're losing, at the end of the day, when we go to 45 to 42, we're losing 3 full market rate units.
Right. Exactly.
That's a big give from,
right.
And that's why the bank is expressing concern at this point.
Right. You would have to lose 4 units and to be able to give up one of the affordable.
That's right. And we didn't want to do that. So
I understand all that. I think my question was, I just want to make sure we're keeping an eye on the ball and we're not trading one problem for another by forcing tenants who are just going to say, yeah, whatever, we're not going to have a car, and how are you going to find out? It's going to be on the street, where they could be in a garage where visitors are more transient and they might be, not there as often. So
yeah,
I think it's something we just need to. I understand and I appreciate the thought, but I think we just need to think about it more and understand if that's if that is solving a problem or really creating another one.
Okay.
Thanks, Craig. Any other board members?
Just a quick statement, basically, that I pointed out, basically in some of the meetings that we've had, is that, there's concern about the neighborhood, from the neighborhood about the guest parking. And I've spent some time over there on the street, basically morning and afternoon, to look at how many parking spaces are and they're used. And they are used by the people that live on the street, particularly on Crescent Street, where in fact, there's a bunch of units there that have no backyard parking, so to speak. And they're always filled with people that assumingly live in those units basically along there. And then up the hill, basically, it's overflow parking for everybody that's on that street. But as I pointed out in our discussion, is if you're a guest and you're provided with an indoor parking space out of the rain, you're not gonna be driving basically in the snow and the rain around the block looking for parking space when you can drive into that lower garage and park and walk right to the elevator basically. So we're all lazy. We're gonna go to the place that's easiest for us, driest for us, and that's where we're gonna park, as opposed to, parking downtown or somewhere else and hoofing it here, or taking another wet spot somewhere on the street, which is utilized by people that live in the area. So think about what's being provided basically for those people that somehow think that these people are going to be wandering around the neighborhood and just finding parking. That doesn't speak to what Greg just brought up, but it speaks to those transients that come in to visit basically. And you can make an argument whether there's enough of that parking or not enough of that parking, but understand that the convenience of parking is being provided within the building, within marked spaces in a dry area, basically. So it makes for a good situation. You don't even get that at some of the more recent stuff we put together basically out there for guest parking. Those are the guest parking are out in the parking lot in the wettest space at all, because you give it to your tenants first, the dry ones.
Okay, thanks, Jim. Anyone else? All right, so I'll offer a few thoughts then. I do appreciate and I echo the sentiments of others, the time that the subcommittees put in, genuinely putting in the extra time and working with the development team and town representatives to get from where we started to here. I personally am still struggling with just the overall massing. I like the look of the building, the way it's headed, the design of it, but I'm still struggling with even 42 units, and we're already hearing financials and banks. Okay. And I'm discouraged by that. If board members remember, we did a 40B not too long ago on Main Street on a site that had 35,000 square feet, and some of it was wooded and had buffers with neighbors, and it was on a flat main street with better sight lines and more parking options. And that was a 28 unit proposal, and it ultimately was approved at 24. And that seemed to be fiscally viable. Don't know the demo or excavation or grading costs relative to what this would potentially be. But here we are at a site that's 25,000 square feet, and we're at 42 units. So we're, almost double, and with 10,000 fewer square feet. So just purely on a site comparison basis with another part of town that is a different site altogether, but in terms of just size, I'm struggling with this one. And I don't know where we go. I don't know what, the details that have been discussed and how far the developer is willing to go here. Again, just already hearing financials and banking. We normally don't go there, 40B or not. I'm just not sure where we go. It is a 40B, and our hands are somewhat tied in terms of zoning relief. But, just about everyone who's spoken on this matter, from the public and even public officials, has voiced numerous concerns about the size and scale and whether this really belongs where it is at this size. And I don't know if we're going to get to a place where we can find common ground that we're all happy with to be able to sign off on something. I'm sorry, those are my current thoughts. And I know we have another letter tonight from one of the abutters. I think she's here and she may speak for herself, but we have a letter from her as well. I'm just struggling with where we are. I know we've come from from a higher number in a bigger building. But if it had started at 100 units, it would have been way over, and we're here, and it makes it look like we've made a huge, tremendous progress. But compared to another similar site, a larger site, and having this many more units packed into a building that's 3 stories right next to other 2-story dwellings, basically enveloping it on Crescent Hill, I struggle with, what the thought process is that this is appropriate at all, given where we are. So I'll leave it right there for tonight.
Dave, can I jump in?
Sure, Amy.
Okay, that's kind of the sentiment that I have too. The team has been really good and really been listening to myself and to Jim and our concerns and trying to work with us, but that's what I'm struggling with as well, is just the overall scope of this is, I'm really struggling with it.
I think you guys need to look back at what our requirements are and what our rights are and what we can do with 40B and how far we can push it.
Right.
And what you need to have to turn something down. And quite honestly, I've looked at those pretty fully, and I don't, I know we got to go back to TAC and we got to vet some other things. But I don't see a whole lot other than we just want to take a chance of seeing something that the housing authority would overturn at this point. However, I do think if we continue to work with them and understand that 42 is their bottom number, that we do be able to work with them on design, on materials, getting better materials, and getting some conditions, landscaping, etc., that we may not be able to get if it goes to appeal. Just my thoughts.
Yeah,
I think
Chip,
that's a good
I would
point.
echo the conditions part of it, especially. I mean, I think I'm struggling with, we heard Chief Sullivan talk about the safety of the neighborhood and having to, if there is a fire in the back of that neighborhood, equipment would be on Crescent Street and moving it up, carrying everything up there. I don't know if we had, I'm with you on the conditions. I don't know if there's something creative we could do to help provide access to those other, something to help on really the health and safety of the neighborhood is where I'm at. Even if it, unfortunately stays at 42 units, but we're somehow able to make it safe. I don't know what those are. I don't like to be the person who presents problems and not solutions, but I think that's unfortunate.
And yeah, Chip, I'm aware, like all the board members are, that it is very limiting. Public safety might be one of those levers that if we just still think the scope and size and mass and number of units creates a public safety issue from fire and police, from traffic and volume and all of it, then we have to continue to sharpen the pencils and see what can be done to make it a more workable project. I'm not saying we're going to a vote and we're going to shoot it down and see what happens on appeal. I'm just saying we have to continue to find some common ground and some sort of compromise. I'm struggling with still 42 units jammed into that neighborhood, given the size of the lot. It's 25,000 square feet. So I'm appealing to the developer and the team to please consider working with the subcommittee and Ezra to continue to work this on behalf of the entire neighborhood, who has expressed time and again their concerns with the scope of this building. Okay, now I'm really done for the night. because we do have to move along. Any other board members want to offer anything tonight? Okay, with that, we'll open it up to public testimony then. If anyone has a comment or question, please raise your hand and we'll call on you in order. First hand I see is Bronwyn Delavope.
Hi, how are you?
Fine, thank you.
Thank you for your comments and Amy's comments. As I'm listening to this, I literally sitting here shaking my head because while I understand this is something that you need to do to address the color, the height, the massing, blah, 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 everything until the end is we've addressed everything except the most obvious thing. And that is, of course, that this is inappropriately sized for that location. Would be perfectly acceptable somewhere else. We all know this. Let's just, admit it. We all know this is just not the right place for this development. I don't know why a more appropriate site was not selected for this. It's going to be sort of like a giant sister bookend on Crescent Street with Brightview at one end and then this on the other. And it's appalling that anyone would think that this is the right thing to do, the appropriate thing to do for that neighborhood. And I mean, I understand that you have to go through the machinations, but all this talk about masking the mass and the bulk of it is the biggest indication that there's something wrong with this project. And what's wrong is that it's too big. When you have to spend this many meetings on tweaking and trying to hide the bulk of a development, that should let you know it's just too big. I also want to ask who's going to be enforcing these conditions, because I've seen what happens with conditions. I'm speaking from 35 years of experience. That we all know that conditions aren't often followed for a very long period of time. But so for the love of reality, let's not be naive about how conditions work. They sound great. They're supposedly enforceable, but they're not enforced. Maybe not after a year or 6 months or whatever. I'm still waiting for some conditions on some developments to be enacted, and they haven't been. This development is a perfect example of what 40B is not supposed to be. It is a perfect example of taking unfair advantage of the 40B law to make a buck. We all know that. To a specific point, I think that if you're going to fine people, residents there, if they don't comply with the one car thing, I don't even think that that's legal. And that's an atrocious thing to even consider that you would have to do. Clearly, another indication that there's something wrong with this development. If you're talking about fining residents, if they have one too many cars, another indication that there's something wrong. I have so many notes and so many questions, but all of it has to do with the minutia of trying to fit this into an area that is not appropriate, that is harmful to the neighborhood, is harmful to the people living there, just not from a lifestyle standpoint only, but for health and safety. And quite frankly, if I were the developer trying to push this through, I would be embarrassed. I would be embarrassed. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Katie Kalaga, sorry.
Oh, hi. Perfect pronunciation. I don't know if you can see me. I turned my video on, but maybe it's
No, it's off, but if you can just state again
Oh,
your
here
name
we
and address for the record. Yep.
Yeah, hi. Katie Kalaga. I live at 9 Crescent Hill. And for Ezra, who might not be as familiar with the layout of the neighborhood, it's about 2/3 of the way up Crescent Hill. So one of those homes that's kind of further in the hill and concerned about emergency access. Thank you, Mr. Hatfield, for your candor and listening to our concerns. At the risk of sounding like a broken record player, I wanted to take a few minutes to take a deeper dive into some of our concerns regarding safety and the impact on the neighborhood. This proposal is for rental apartment units. This is not Brightview senior living or owner occupied condos. This will be a different demographic with an increased burden on the neighborhood. For some context, the current 3 buildings are listed in our tax database as having 3 units at 44 Crescent and 2 units at 46 and 48 for a total of 7 units. This proposal includes a total of 42 rental units. That's 6 times the number of units that are currently on site. Think about the moves in and out of the building. Again, we're not talking about Brightview or owner occupied condos. Since Crescent Commons will be all rental apartments, there will be people moving in and out regularly, which means additional parking, vehicles parked illegally, and blocking the area during their moves. Once they move in, like many of us, the residents will be getting lots of deliveries, everything from Amazon to takeout. Your plan for all the deliveries is to come in and out through Crescent Street. While I appreciate the spirit of keeping the delivery vehicles off of Crescent Hill, which is where I live, we know that's not going to happen. How are they going to be pulling in and then backing out onto Crescent Street, which is a pretty busy street, and there's also a light right there? Delivery drivers currently pull over on the side of the street for convenience, and I can only imagine what type of volume we'd expect from the 42 units. Next is trash. The current renters in the existing units generate a huge amount of trash, and each week we see the 64-gallon bins overflowing by 30 to 50%. Again, we're not talking about the Brightview demographic here. When we consider 6 times as many units, we expect a significant amount of trash, 16 to 20 cubic feet of trash per week, and comparable amounts of recycling. I didn't get a good look at your plan, but if trash was picked up once a week, that would mean a 20-foot bin, 20 feet by 7 feet by 4 feet, and it's smaller if it's picked up more. But also recycling. And, I'd like to understand the size of that room and also the logistics of how that pickup is actually going to happen. And then most importantly is the parking situation. So people who live in Wakefield drive cars, many which are large vehicles such as SUVs. I know my husband and I each have an SUV, and we are not the people who park on Crescent Hill. We have 2 parking spots on our property. I appreciate the fact that a few extra parking spots were created in the spirit of avoiding Crescent Hill, but this does not solve the parking concerns that we voiced. As Tom mentioned, many of the proposed parking spots in the garage are compact, and I personally question if the garage will truly fit the number of vehicles. Greg's comments were also spot on. What happens if 3 single people rent one of those 3-bedroom units? They each have a vehicle, and they each have a significant other who visits regularly and has a vehicle. That's a total of up to 6 vehicles. Where are they all going to park? Also, there's currently an unoccupied 2-family home on Crescent Hill that's on the market, as well as an unoccupied apartment. These buildings are not currently generating demand for on-street parking, but we expect this existing housing that's already in place here to put additional demand on the already scarce street parking once they become occupied. You had mentioned that this is a transit-oriented development. I want to point out that the owner of the unoccupied apartment in our neighborhood tried very hard to find tenants who only had 1 car without much luck, and their new tenants have 2 cars. So please consider that as you're thinking about the practicality of this project. The neighborhood cannot support the type of overflow parking that will be generated from a 42-unit building. There is simply not enough space. People will park illegally, even if we restrict the legal spots to residents only. This illegal parking, compounded with the expected congestion from moves, deliveries, and trash, all restrict emergency access to my home and my neighbor's home. We have 2 young children, and several neighbors have significant medical conditions. Please consider the needs and safety of the existing neighborhood and the people and families who live here. Our neighborhood truly cannot support this project. Thank you for your time. I know it seems like I was reading. I had to write up the notes, and I'll send that to the board tomorrow.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Rebecca Sweat, I believe you're next.
Hi there, Rebecca Sweat, 40 Crescent. I'm at the corner of Crescent Street and Crescent Hill. So as you make the turn to go up Crescent Hill, I'm the house that would be directly opposite the proposed building. I wanted to bring up two things. Well, first of all, I have to second Katie's comment about the size of the parking spots versus the SUVs, because I actually work at a company in Cambridge that did this. They striped the spots for small cars, expecting that people in and out of the city would have reasonably sized vehicles. And not even a year later, they're having to completely restripe and resize because the SUVs don't fit. They end up parking over the line. They end up taking 2 spots. Yeah, it's been a real pain, at least in my experience. The other thing I wanted to bring up is that several of us on the street are concerned with the property management of this much larger number of units. I just wanted to clarify, the Bocellis are not hiring a property management company. Did I hear that correctly earlier?
Ryan, can you answer that?
I'm sorry, could you please repeat the question, Mr. Chair?
I just wanted to clarify that the Bocellis are not, in fact, hiring a property management company.
That's undetermined at this point.
Okay.
Building hasn't even been built.
I understand. And the reason why I'm concerned is like Katie mentioned, there's only a handful of units on that property, but there's frequently overflowing garbage. There's garbage on the street. There are currently broken tree limbs lying in the yard. And there's been a broken shovel that's been lying in the front yard for over a year. And, also currently the tenants that I know that are over there doesn't have a lease. I'm just curious about how experienced they are with enforcing not just a lease, but a conditional lease designed to make the property work. So I'm very concerned with the management of the property. And I really have to say, I appreciate all the changes that you guys have made to make it more friendly to the residents of Crescent Hill. I know how much work you guys have been putting into it. And I really, from the bottom of my heart, thank you for that. But yeah, just if you can't manage the 6 units that are over there now, what's going to happen with 42 if there's not property management taking care of garbage and broken tree limbs and the rats that live under the porch? That's it. Thank you.
Thank you. Mark Mitchell.
Good evening. Mark Mitchell, 14 Crescent Hill. Thank you. I want to thank definitely the subcommittee for all the work they've been doing and the board for hearing all of our concerns and working hard on this project. I had intended to talk about mostly the mass of this building and just how big of a project it is and how big of a house or apartment building that they're talking about putting on this these 3 lots. Again, Katie had already, I don't want to keep repeating all of the things that are there, but there's 7 units there currently today, and 42 are being what's proposed. That's 6 times, 72 bedrooms. Crescent Hill alone on itself, the street that I live on, the whole street, we have 13 units with 41 bedrooms. It's just staggering. So, and that's kind of what we said at the beginning, what I said at the beginning, and I'm going to stand by that all along. I do appreciate all that I've heard tonight. I appreciate that everyone is paying attention and working on this. And I also have a lot of concerns and questions about some of the operational things, but I've heard a lot of that tonight, and we'll leave that for another time. But thank you very much for your time, and thank you for your work on this.
Okay, thank you. Don't see any other hands up. So we'll close with the public testimony for the evening. Back to the board. So I think what we need to see, in addition to any
I'm
sort
sorry,
of
I don't know how to put my hand up.
Oh, okay. Sorry, Tina, is your video on? I may not have seen you waving. Your video? Oh, no, I didn't. Yeah, there's no video. Sorry. Yeah, do you have something more to offer that we haven't already heard, or other questions or comments?
I do have something I'd like to say. I'm sorry that you can't get a picture of me. I'm on my cell phone. I just don't know how to do this.
Okay.
But I wanted to add in that I live on 7 Crescent Hill. I have a 2-family home there. I have a rental apartment that I've been trying to rent for 3 months now. It's all renovated. I only built my home in 2004, so it's all brand new. and I only have one off-street parking space for my 2-bedroom apartment. It's taken me 3 months to finally accept someone with 2 cars who's going to have to find someplace else to park during the wintertime because we have no off-street parking during the winter. Like, I just don't understand how all these people are going to have like parking spaces for 1 and 2 bedroom apartments. It's taken me 3 months and I still have to take someone with 2 cars. So to me, your parking spaces, although you think they're adequate, I just feel like it's not realistic. And I totally agree with what you said, Mr. Hatfield, earlier, that this is just too big for our area. Think about it. We're going from 2 or 3 family homes to 46 units, I think it is now. I just wanted to say, please help us on Crescent Hill. And that's, I mean, 40B or not, it's just not appropriate for this area. Thank you for listening to me.
Sure. Thank you. All right, now we'll close the public testimony. So back to the board. I think we have to provide the subcommittee and the development team some sort of direction on where we go from here. You know, whether we continue this to our next hearing or we continue to some future hearing and let the subcommittee continue to work on this. So what are other thoughts from other board members here? And the subcommittee, Amy and Jim, I mean, and Brian.
So Dave, I see that we're at a stumbling point, because if we say continue at 42 units, you, Amy, others are struggling with the size of the project. If we say continue, then we're having them do work on a project that you may not see make sense. I think we're all struggling with the size. I think I need some help on direction as to how much we can push. And from my understanding, we can't push a whole lot. You know, we went from 46 to 42. I know you've stated some other things, but in reading what I've read about 40B and whatnot, you know, unless we can come up with true safety concerns that the police are going to back and the fire department's going to back, massing doesn't really come into effect, because that's why they get the zoning breaks they get. So as much as I don't like the project at 42 units, I don't know whether we have a lot of pushback. So to me, the direction either needs to be that we accept kind of the size and move forward, or take your impassioned plea and see if they come back in 3 weeks or whatever September 8th is, and see if they can do anything else with the massing, and then decide to go from there. Maybe have the subcommittee have another meeting with them and see if there's any room. But unfortunately, my opinion is whether the difference between 42 and 40 or 39 or 38, any significance difference is going to be 42 to 35 or 30. And I just don't see that happening. So those are my thoughts. I don't know if it helps at all. You know, I don't know. This is one of the toughest ones in the 17 years that I've been on the board to deal with, because I can't wrap my head around. You know, kind of agree with Brian that this is the stretch of what a 40B should be, and that this isn't why it was created. However, you can't kind of cherry pick. Oh, I like the rules for 40B for this project. I don't like them for that project. And that's what I'm struggling with. So I give Amy and Jim tons of credit, and the developer, quite frankly, to get from 56 to 42, and the massing and the size. And, you know, our choice, I guess, is kind of whether we ask our subcommittee to push back and see if we can do something with the unit count. But to me, going from 42 to 40 makes no difference, or 42 to really 37, it might make a little difference. I mean, really what we're talking about is 42 to 20 to make it fit into the neighborhood that we would all be comfortable. Well, I don't know that we all, I hate to make statements like some of our town people do. We all know, right? I don't know, but maybe 20 would be something that everybody could live with, but that's not realistic. So I'm trying to figure out what's realistic and what goals can we give people to work on. And unfortunately, I can't give you any direction, Mr. Chairman. I can just give you thoughts.
I appreciate the thoughts. That's what we need to work through. Anyone else?
Yeah, Dave, this is Greg. I think I just gotta go back to what I said earlier. It doesn't necessarily, I know we've been harping on size, although I would very much prefer the size to come down, but I think, to Chip's point about, I don't think we did hear our public safety officials fully buy into this. Chief Sullivan talked about access to the neighborhood. If there's some sort of combination even of, reduction in size and, I don't know, creative access to the back of the neighborhood, or maybe not even reduction in size. Again, I would prefer that, but something to be able to kind of appease our public safety, not appease, that's not the right word, but help our public safety officials get fully on board with, yeah, this isn't going to impact the safety of the neighborhood. So to me, it doesn't, if it's going to stay like it is, it needs to get creative in some sort of, whether it be access or accommodations to the rest of the neighborhood on keeping this a safe project. So I guess, yes, option A is units, but I think option B is some sort of creative solution between access to the neighborhood and units.
I don't know that you're going to get any support from what I've heard from the fire department, police department. I say that in two different ways. The fire department has the same situation, whether this building exists or not, in getting up to the end of Crescent Hill.
Hey, Jim, can we let them address this rather than give them evidence to get this overturned? I mean, we all know what Chief Sullivan said.
Well, if I may, Mr. Chair.
Yes, Brian.
Chief Sullivan's said that there's a problem no matter what, because I watched the tape. And the other thing his concern is what was with illegal parking, which we're providing a pretty high ratio of over required zoning. And again, it's a hypothetical that somebody's going to illegally park where they can be towed. They're right across the street from the police station. So with all due respect, I think at this point, this building, there clearly is not a public safety issue with the building. I mean, that's our perspective. We're very comfortable with position with the public safety. There's Opticom systems to get people in and out. The traffic impact in this project, the town peer review consultant says there's basically no traffic impact that would impair performance on the street. So, and it was stated by Chief Sullivan very clearly that he has a problem that isn't going to change. So, but we're, again, if you give us suggestions, I think one of the things that, we're happy to continue to cooperate. So if you think something can be done to improve it, tell us what you want, and we'll try to do that. One of the things that I think the Traffic Advisory Committee will take up, because Lieutenant Anderson said that it has to go back to the Traffic Advisory Committee. And one of the things that he wants to hear from the neighborhood, he mentioned that because, the TAC does at the public hearing. And one of the things I think he mentioned that he wanted to vet was the possibility of resident parking only on that street, which some streets have, that, basically that, you have to, post it, and this would not be included as a residents of this building. Would only be people that have houses on Crescent Hill. That might be something that's not entertaining, but certainly it's an enforcement mechanism that could enhance safety, because now you have an enforceable towing event. If somebody parks there, they're going to get their car towed to get them out of there if they're not allowed to do it. So, there are some solutions or things that, and that would actually improve safety from what it is today without the building. Will make it better for everybody than the condition it is today. that's there today. So, like, we're happy to pay for the cost to post it, but it's a two-way street that, we all have to work together to come up with those solutions, and we're ready, willing, and able to do it and to fund it.
Okay, well, I appreciate that. And again, that would be a nice, detail to get to at some point. But again, it doesn't go back to the big elephant in the room. And again, my plea was to the developer and the team. I would like to see the committee and the team work at least one more session before the next meeting to see if there's any more solutions that could be made. Even that top section, I'm looking at that top section that jets out behind the other house on Crescent Hill. I forget the address. That has 3 stories and a proposed patio roof. Like, can that come down one level and knock off 4 units? So it's not quite so big in their backyard. I'm just throwing it out there. I'm just not to adjudicate tonight. That's only 4 units, to your point, Chip, but does it make the massing a little less cumbersome for the people, that abut that section that goes back there? I don't know what other, shaving here and shaving there and saving a unit. I get it. But I would ask the team to consider going back and at least trying to find with our consultant, Mr. Glenn, to see what other options would be available, and just implore the development team to listen to the concerns that they're hearing. Yes, we know it's a 40B. And yes, Chip, we know our hands are tied to some degree here, but I would just ask, that's what I would ask. I'm going to struggle if we just say 42's it and we're just going to now talk about landscaping. I don't think I'm there yet. So I would like to ask the team to try and see what other things can be done.
Can I ask
see where we are in a few weeks? Go ahead.
Just a quick question, just to be sure everyone's mindful of the timeline. I know I came in late, but this was first advertised February 10th, I think. Is that right? Have you gotten extensions and all of that yet? Or
it's been extended to October 31st at the current time.
October 31st. Okay.
So we do have a little more time, and if we'll see where we are, ahead of that, and see if if we feel like we just need a little more time to get through the end, then usually I think that's something we can accommodate with both teams. But for now, we've got a little more breathing room. Ezra, yeah.
Thanks.
So, Mr. Chairman, given your plea and given that we have lots of other things to do tonight, I move that we continue this to September 8th, having heard your concerns and desires, and ask our team to get together with their team and take your concern under consideration and see what can be done.
Yeah, if I could just make a statement, Mr. Chair, I on behalf of my client, we very much appreciate the candor of the board. It's always good to know where everybody's coming from. So thank you for expressing your feelings and concerns. We hear them, and we will. I think Ezra has some qualifications here. He was at the meeting, so he really has not had a chance to really participate in this. So we're happy to meet with the subcommittee again and continue discussions.
Okay, thank you. So Chip, your motion is on the floor. Did I hear a second?
Yeah.
Thank you, Amy. Any discussion on the motion? All right, Chip?
Yes.
Amy?
Yes.
Jim? Jim, you're on mute. Yeah, Jim's waving yes. Okay. Tom?
Yes.
And I vote yes. All right, thank you for the information and the discussion tonight, and we'll see you in a few weeks.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you.
All right.
Thanks.
Another disadvantage of not being in the meeting room is you can't take a 5-minute recess. At least I don't know that anyone's been doing it on these Zoom calls. All right, our next continued hearing is 21-50, 51, and 52 CCF Corner Powered Property Company LLC at 200 to 400 Corner Powered Parkway.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, members of the board. For record, Attorney Brian McGrail representing the petitioner on this matter. What we plan on discussing tonight is our economic impact report. We had done an analysis and the board had asked us to work with the Community Development Director, Erin Kokinda, to find a consultant that was qualified to do a study, not just only on the tax impacts, but the potential business impacts from a positive way that that this project at 200, 400 Quannapowitt Parkway could have on the businesses in the town of Wakefield. So the board could get a feel for that, just not the impacts on the services in relation to taxes. So Matt D'Amico, who is here tonight, again, on behalf of Cabot Cabinet Forbes, and also with us is Eric Halverson. Eric is from RKG Associates, and he is the individual that we retained in consultation with Erin and to help develop a scope for him to look at. And we have, Eric has come up with a report that he has submitted. You know, I guess I'd like to start by kind of familiarizing everybody with who RKG Associates Inc. is. RKG Associates is an economic planning and real estate consulting firm. They have offices throughout the country in Boston, Georgia, Dallas, Texas. They've been in business since 1981, and they've completed more than 2,000 consulting projects regionally, nationally, and internationally, providing comprehensive range of economic planning, marketing, and management services to governments, businesses, and institutions. They specialize in the application of economic analysis to real estate development toward the goal of attracting private sector investment and job creation. So this is a very qualified firm. This study was led by Eric Halverson, who is a vice president and principal of RKG, who is with us tonight and will address the board. Eric graduated from the University of Illinois with a master's of city and regional planning. He went to Rutgers University undergrad, and he also attended Harvard University Executive Education Program on urban retail. Eric has completed economic impact analysis or experiences for the following projects: Northland Newton Development Impact Peer Review in Newton, the Mashpee Commons Development Impact Analysis for Mashpee, Mass, Assembly Row in Somerville, Oak Grove Mill Impact Analysis in Melrose, Sharon Gallery Impact Analysis in Sharon, the Serenova Project in Somerville, and then the Norton Heights Impact Analysis in Darien, Connecticut. So Eric has a great resume, some great experience, and I think I'm going to kind of hand it over to Matt. Matt, maybe you can take over. You're going to handle the PowerPoint, Matt?
Eric has it on his side. So
great.
Eric, if you could just share your screen,
Yeah.
that would be great.
You want to say hello to the board, and if you would, and maybe you're free to share the screen whenever you want.
Great. Good evening, everyone. I'm happy to be here. I'm going to attempt to share my screen. Hopefully this will work for everyone. Just let me know when you're able to see it.
We can
see it. Yep.
Perfect. Matt, would you like me to run through it? Or do
Yeah, if you could just run through your presentation and your methodology of your study. Also, if you could just make this full screen, if you could, would be great. Thank you.
Absolutely.
And I'd like to add, Mr. Chair, I think Erin is on here, so I'm sure the board will want to hear from her since she oversaw this once Eric is done or throughout sometime tonight.
Sure, we always like hearing from Erin.
Go ahead, Eric.
Hi, everyone. Eric Halverson, principal, and I'm the managing principal of our Boston, Massachusetts office, so I'm a local. I think Brian and Matt provided a good overview of what we'll cover tonight. I hope this won't take too much time. I know it's getting late into the evening. Just a quick, is this in the way?
Yep, we can see it perfectly.
Oh, okay, great.
Eric, could you just speak up a little bit? I'd appreciate it. Thank you.
Yeah, sorry, I'm not in my normal setup. I'm actually in my parents' basement on vacation. So I apologize if it's not as clear as it typically is. So RKG was asked by the town and CCF to undertake an analysis of the economic impact of the new households that would occupy the proposed about 485 units as part of this development project. So the specific question for us at hand was really to try to quantify the spending capacity of these new households, specifically on retail and restaurants, and then to try and estimate the amount of that household spending that could potentially be captured by the businesses in downtown Wakefield. Given the proximity of the project to the downtown and actually the multitude of ways that residents would have to sort of get to downtown, and also honestly the really great business mix that exists in downtown, you know, it's reasonable to assume that a percentage of that household spending across a variety of different retail and restaurant categories would be captured by the businesses of downtown. So to complete this particular analysis, RKG utilized a number of our different data sources and past reports, including the 2016 Downtown Wakefield study that was completed for the town by Fine Point Associates, and also data from public and proprietary sources that we often use, including the Census Bureau, Esri Business Analyst, the Urban Land Institute, and others. So we've taken our analysis and we've written a memo, which I believe we've submitted to the board, and are tonight really just trying to present the key findings to you, which include one, the total project related spending that's projected from the 485 new households, and the percentage of total spending that could potentially be captured by the businesses here in downtown Wakefield. So first, to quantify the potential household spending for this project, we needed to understand what a typical household spending pattern is across the town of Wakefield. So using estimates from Esri Business Analyst, which is a proprietary software that we use for our retail studies, households in Wakefield spend an average of about $36,000 a year on consumer goods, including restaurants and drinking establishments, and retail as well. This includes spending locally, so what gets spent sort of in the local capture market, but also within the broader, say, greater Boston region, that capture, even money that gets spent when people are traveling or even through online purchases. So it's that 36,000 is representative of all consumer spending from those households, not just the money that gets spent here in Wakefield. So if we apply the total household spending estimate of that $36,000 per household to the new proposed 485 households in this project, we get a total spending estimate of about 17.6 million annually across all the different retail categories and all the different geographies that I just mentioned. So not surprisingly, the top spending categories that we often see for households include things like food and beverage stores, so grocery stores, beer and wine, general merchandise like big box stores, TJ Maxx, Walmart, those types of things, and also restaurants. This is really where most households spend their consumer spending when it comes to the retail and food categories. So now that we have an understanding of what a typical household might be expected to spend in a given year, we then really needed to estimate what percentage of that total spending could be captured by downtown businesses. You know, we know that money will be spent in a lot of different locations, including competitive centers in, say, nearby Melrose or Linfield or Reading. Some will be spent closer to where people work. Some will be spent on day trips, long weekends, or even long vacations. So for this, we applied a capture rate to each of the retail and restaurant categories, and I'll show you what those numbers look like in a minute, which is basically a percentage that gets multiplied against the total spending in any given retail or restaurant category. That percentage represents then the amount of money that these households may spend in downtown. And the other thing to note is that in our analysis, we limited the retail and the restaurant categories to ones that are currently present in the downtown. So we tried not to account for retail categories that really don't have a presence in the downtown today. So we assumed that if a retail category wasn't present in the downtown, there wouldn't be anything to capture locally. We also assumed if a retail category had a bigger presence in downtown, say like restaurants, for example, where there's a lot of restaurants in the downtown, there's also a small grocer in the downtown, or say a personal care store like a CVS or a pharmacy, which is in downtown, the capture rate for those categories would say be higher than maybe clothing stores, for example, which don't have as big of a presence today in downtown. Overall, we assumed about a 30% of household spending could be captured in downtown Wakefield based on consumer spending patterns, the easy access, as I mentioned before, to downtown from the project's location, as well as the strength of the downtown in terms of its business mix. And I really think its overall appeal to the folks who might live here in this project. So in terms of the spending capture for downtown specifically, it breaks down to about $7,000, give or take, per household, or about $3.5 million in aggregate. So if we take that $7,000 that you see there in the top line, we multiply it by the 485 projected households, we get just under $3.5 million in total spending that we believe could be captured in the downtown by the businesses today. We also wanted to try to better understand what that number could mean for the actual businesses in downtown. So we looked at the spending boost kind of on a per square foot basis as well. So we went back to the 2016 study that was completed for the downtown by Fine Point Associates, and also subsequent conversations with Aaron. And we used the 2016 study's estimate of about 143,000 square feet of built retail and restaurant space in the downtown area as our baseline. When we divide the new infusion of spending from this project by the existing retail square footage, that 143,000 square feet, we end up with an additional spend value of about $24 per built square foot on top of kind of what's being spent today. That, I think, is the impact to the businesses in the downtown. And just to look at it a different way, on a percentage basis, it's about a 10% increase over current sales per square foot across that 143,000 square feet, if we assume that the businesses in the downtown are averaging somewhere around $250 a square foot. Some businesses, of course, do more than that on a square foot basis in terms of sales. Some will do less, but if we use that as an estimate, it helps to boost their sales percentages by about 10%. Again, I want to say that these positive impacts, they might be felt differently based on the business or the business type. So, for example, the restaurants might actually see a higher boost in spending because of their prevalence in the downtown, and also just the propensity of households to spend on food and beverages. But this still represents a very positive impact to the downtown overall. As I mentioned, we just added in this table. This is also in the memo, just to see, just to show you how we broke down the potential captured sales by the different retail and restaurant categories. Again, these say 12 or so categories are just limited to the business types that exist in the downtown today. We tried to strip out, as I mentioned before, any retail categories that are not currently present in the downtown, assuming that the spending dollars associated with those other categories would be spent elsewhere, maybe in Wakefield or maybe in surrounding communities or elsewhere outside of the surrounding communities. But this is sort of how that $3.5 million breaks down across the different categories. You can see grocery stores, there's a big spending impact, health and personal care stores, a big spending impact, and restaurants, a big spending impact. Those are the things that have a good presence in the downtown. Also things that households tend to spend more on versus, say, specialty food or florists or shoe stores, where they're not spending as much on an annual basis. So just in summary, the 485 units associated with the proposed project is projected by RKG to produce about $17.5 million in the annual spending across those retail and restaurant categories, across all the retail and restaurant categories, with a projected $3.5 million captured by the businesses in downtown based on the current retail and restaurant mix. And again, that would equate to about a 10% boost in the annual sales if we assume that businesses are doing about $250 a square foot in sales. So that's the quick overview. And Brian and Matt, I don't know if you have anything to add. If not, I'm happy to go back over anything.
No, that's great, Eric. Thank you. So I think we'd like to open up to questions at this point.
Board members,
Mr. Chair, if I could, if Erin's on,
I think she is. She was. Yeah, she's here.
Yep.
I'd love to get her opinion of the process, the findings, and her thoughts, because this was kind of her deal.
Oh, I feel so honored. So,
You're our expert, kid. Come on.
so actually, Matt found RKJ, which I actually know from other people that I know through the economic development world have used them before, which they mentioned. So they found them to do the whole study. I worked with them, just telling them, send them a bunch of studies that have been done in our past, and then also kind of like double checked everything that they did to make sure that everything lined up. Other than that, I thought they did a really great job. I know these numbers are really hard to predict, right? I mean, who knows what today's numbers can bring in compared to like 5 years from now, but I think they kind of aligned with, what makes sense for today's numbers. So, but yeah, using the 2016 numbers, I kind of double checked all that and to make sure it made sense with our commercial footprint today, which has not changed too much. Might be different stores and everything, but yeah, I think it's lined up. Does that answer your question, Chip?
Yeah, I guess the other question I had is some thought, geez, once we get this, do we need to have somebody else look at it? And it sounds to me like you're pretty comfortable that you've looked at it and feel comfortable with the findings.
Like I said, I think it's really hard to predict any sort of numbers like through a study like this. I mean, if you guys want someone else to look at this, I think that's fine. But I think these numbers are really hard to predict. And I think RKG did a really good job.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Well, I still have you though. There's one other question I just want to ask. I know at one point you had hoped the developer would consider a bigger retail presence on site.
Yes.
And given that a lot of thought, I think I align with you in that thought. Where do you stand today in your thinking?
I still stand by that. And I've talked to Matt about that as well. And, I kind of thought, I think we all know this project is not going to happen in a year, but how do we start recruiting people now? And it's kind of been in the back of my mind. How do we get a restaurant or larger cafe here? As we know this, if this project moves along.
So Erin, I have a thought, and I don't know about recruiting, but to me, whether we call it a cafe or a convenience store or what, I'm looking at, if it stays 485 or whatever it stays or goes to, convenience is probably the number one aspect, right? Takeout foods, beverages, something that the people there can stop down to. Our life is fast, jump in, have a meal, whatever. And then a nice restaurant or a larger space that could be more social. I don't know if you've had a chance to get up to Salem, New Hampshire yet, but they've done a whole marketplace up there with an outside venue, and I'm not certainly supporting that, but we've got a great lake. We've got a great area. I think it would be nice if people in town could use along this development to get a better presence to bring some outside people in. And if that meant losing units, honestly, I say so be it. But to try to figure out what that is and how it would both work for the community and the project.
And yeah, that's the big thing I said in my letter. I think for the people that not only live there, but people that also that live here in town already, how do we find something that kind of meets everyone's standards of what they want to enjoy the lake if they live there already, people that want to shoot down and grab something quick. I think I'm kind of on board with the same thing.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Aaron, Jim McBain.
Hi, Jim.
One of the things that when they mention this, people going from here to there, and sure, they can be shuttles, but a lot of people are going to drive. And we have parking problems down there now, even with the replanning of Main Street and the side streets. We have missed the opportunity for a parking garage downtown. That faded away from us several years ago, which would have helped the downtown considerably and would have allowed for some of these people that are in surrounding area basically come into town and utilize those. So we're strangled because of that decision at this point. So what's in the future for us to actually provide for parking downtown beyond what's on the street now?
Does this have to do with this development or just in general?
Well, in general, but when what we've heard is basically how the business community will basically get more income because of this project, supposedly. But in order for them to take it, for the community, downtown community, to take advantage of it, they need parking. And unless you're going to think that everybody's going to be shuttled down there. And so
yeah,
I guess the question is, on a long-term planning, what is our opportunity to get a garage once again? I mean, it's been like 3 times we tried to get a garage in this town, and the last one got scuttled totally, which is quite upsetting to me because the opportunity was there, and it wasn't for lack of trying, basically.
So I can't answer that question in regards to getting a new garage anytime soon, but I can answer the question as in, one, I actually have never had trouble finding parking downtown. To be honest, you just have to walk a little bit, but that's just me. Sorry, I know some people don't like walking, but we also need to change our mindset in the way we look at transportation, right? And so we have to also realize that we're never going to find a spot right in front of the place we need to go. Also, these new residents that are living at the head of the lake or any new development and I think from the town's perspective, Massachusetts in general, we just need to look at transportation a little differently. And I know CCNF has been talking about putting the shuttle on the road, which again, it's not going to solve all our problems, but it's a start. And I think we need to think alternatively also that these people will hopefully walk more. And maybe, I'm not being realistic in all this, but I do think a lot of people do only have one car now. I think single family homes actually have more cars than this, any sort of development that's moving forward and these larger developments. And I think we just need to work on trying to change the mindset of how we get to places. So I think proactively planning wise, we have to look at more TDM measures, transportation demand management, whether that be getting people out of their single occupancy vehicle. And I know right now that sounds crazy, but if that's biking, walking, using the shuttle, I think it's just, we need to keep pushing that forward and any sort of development that we might see in town moving forward. So that doesn't answer your question directly, but planning wise, I think that's kind of the direction a lot of people are moving in.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Other board members? For Eric or Aaron, perhaps?
Yeah.
All right, well, while you're thinking, I've got a couple. So the 250K you said was based on current spending per square foot. Was that from that 2016 study, and that this potentially would generate an extra 24 per square foot, whatever the number was, or 10% roughly increase? Was that 250, I think was said, was that from the study? So that's an actual number from our actual spending downtown per square foot or something?
Great question. It was not in the 2016 study. That's just based on our experience working across markets and sort of a typical. So again, for say a Starbucks, for example, that number could be a lot higher. For a small 5 and dime shop, that number could be lower. So we just tried to take an average that we could then apply across that 143,000 or so square feet.
Okay, so it's not from Wakefield specifically, but it is based on other projects of those similar types of businesses. And their prevalence in those towns and so forth, sort of.
Yep. Yeah, and some of that comes from actual proprietary data that we've collected working for actual retailers. And some of those averages come from just kind of national averages that are out there for different types of retail and restaurant categories. So we tried to, as I mentioned before, we tried to take an average here and apply it across Wakefield.
And is that take into account, like, you know, the property values or valuations, like, you know, the spending rate at Newbury Street in Boston might be different than some, you know, rural town or Wakefield maybe, you know, so does it account for the sort of the town and the sort of the valuations of the buildings or the rents or whatever?
Yeah, great question. So some of our proprietary data is actually mostly from the suburbs, where we do a majority of our work, rather than, like your example, Seaport or Newbury Street, where you know, spending and also rents are extremely high. But the national averages that we use across the retail and restaurant categories, those are national averages across the whole country. So a lot of that kind of gets balanced out in the wash.
Okay, thank you for that.
Sure.
And the other aspect, again, that you covered a lot of categories with the different types of retail and other stores, but is it just harder to model, or just not part of this study, that other services, you know, there could be local services, accountants, and just, you know, other services in a town? Are they just harder to measure, you know, because they potentially would have another economic impact too, a positive one potentially, but there are other services, other types of businesses, obviously, besides the one in your chart. Are they just harder to measure, or we just chose to scope it the way we did? I'm just curious.
Yeah, I mean, I'll let Matt or Brian answer about the scoping piece of it, but you know, our request was on the retail and the restaurant side, so that's what we did.
Okay.
And also those numbers are a lot easier for us to get a handle on, rather than how much money someone spends, say, on an attorney or an accountant or even a dry cleaner for that matter.
Right, just other types of businesses that.
Yeah.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman, if I could.
Sure.
You know, when we were scoping this out, I think, as Eric mentioned, we're looking primarily at retail and restaurants, but in looking at the Fine Point study from 2016, studying downtown Wakefield, it's clear that there's a ton of services like what you mentioned, accountants, attorneys, that have office spaces above a lot of those retail spaces that would, I think, pretty evidently have an economic boon as a result of this project.
Yeah, I think it's reasonable to assume they all area businesses would have some sort of potentially positive impact. It's just, I just wanted to clarify, just to and bring it out here, but I appreciate the explanation. Thank you. Anyone else?
Yeah, Mr. Chair, this is Greg. I had a question. I kind of want to understand, and maybe it was in there and I just didn't understand it. The, I guess, interplay or interaction with having, was it Walker's Brook or whatever the name of that retail center is, arguably, probably closer in Reading. Was that factored into the 3.5, into the final numbers, or how does that, I mean, we were talking about parking. If there is no parking, someone's going to go to where there's a giant parking lot that has similar restaurants. Was that taken into effect, that there is similar type of stores and restaurants, arguably closer and with more parking?
Yeah.
Sorry, go ahead, Matt.
I was just gonna say, I'll let Eric answer that, but more generally, you know, yes, we looked at, you know, the demographics that we think our project is going to have and the type of product that they'll be seeking in terms of, you know, retail establishments and restaurants. But Eric, if you want to explain how the capture rate itself for downtown was.
And I apologize if this is in there already. I was just trying to understand it. I might have missed it or just not understood. Or...
It's great. That's why we're here. Happy to answer the questions. So to account for local, what we would call competitive centers, like Marketplace at Linfield, for example, or Walker's Brook in Reading, or even downtown Melrose, or, you know, as probably a closer proxy. That's why we applied this capture rate to the overall household. So if the overall household spending per year is about $7,000, give or take, we're then essentially taking 30% of that. So 70% of that $7,000 we're saying is going to go elsewhere in the marketplace, whether it goes to nearby communities or it goes to California if someone takes a trip for business or pleasure. You know, that 70% is being spent elsewhere, and we're saying 30% would be captured here in downtown. And that 30%, as I mentioned, it goes up and down based on the retail categories. So restaurants, where there's that really high prevalence of restaurants in downtown Wakefield, we're assuming a higher capture rate because it's more likely that people are going to come local to the restaurants, whether it's takeout for pizza or it's a nice sit down at the pub. And then things like, say, shoe stores or clothing stores, we have the capture rate lower to account for, you know, most people probably are going to go to a mall, or they might go to a big box store like a TJ Maxx, or even more, you know, probably even more so nowadays, shop on Amazon or, you know, Wayfair or something like that. So the capture rate is meant to essentially say, this is how much we believe will be captured just in downtown by these new households.
So that seems like that's more of an average rather than a actually saying, oh, you know, Walkersbrook is closer with more parking, so we're gonna adjust it up or down. Is that just a number that's kind of taken from these national averages, or did you actually factor in that there might be more convenient opportunities or?
I'm not familiar with the exact retail mix over at
Okay.
Walkersbrook. Is that where the market basket is? Over
No,
there?
it's even before that. It's more
Oh, it's
restaurants
before
and
that.
stuff. So, but that kind of answers my question. That's
okay.
And I did mention that to Eric too, and we had a conversation. That's how he explained how he got to these numbers. I said, you know, they're right there on Reading Fine. There's a market basket, Stop and Shop. Again, I think what Eric was just alluding to, like there, you know, chain more restaurants there. So, but yes, he explained the way he just explained that is what he explained to me.
Yeah, got it. Thanks.
Does that take into account all of the empty storefronts?
It doesn't. We talked with Aaron just to try to see if that 143,000 or so square feet was still accurate, as well as the retail categories that we were accounting for. So we did have a bit of back and forth with Aaron around that. But the assumption is, I know the project, if it were to be approved, it would be a little ways off in terms of construction and occupancy. And I think the hope would be that post-COVID, hopefully we're making our way through this thing, businesses will start to come back, spending will start to come back to downtown. And I think this project will really have a, you know, only positive impacts on businesses, and maybe even potentially helping to spark additional businesses to fill in those vacancies due to the added spending.
Yeah, I mean, that would be really nice. Just we've been seeing a lot of empty storefronts for 10 plus years now. So it's hard to imagine that something like this is going to bring more businesses downtown or on site that are going to be successful and last, especially when we have places like Walkersbrook and Market Street.
The only thing I'll add to that is, you know, there's been a bunch of studies that have come out, Amy, that have shown that there's been more kind of local downtown drives with the COVID. So I guess there's a lot of positive coming out. I know I've personally gotten a lot of calls about people interested in opening places in Wakefield. So I'm hoping that that will change.
That's good to hear. Thank you.
Anyone else? Okay. Brian, that was the main topic for the evening, right? Was this one thing?
Yes, Mr. Chair.
Okay.
Yeah, I think, you know, we're not ready on traffic. The town peer review is asked for quite a bit of information that our traffic consultant continues to work with him and provide what he needs. And then it's going to have to go back to TAC sometime in September before it can be brought to the board.
Right. We did receive an update from Lieutenant Anderson on that. Yep.
So we're working hard on that. You know, I think, you know, people are waiting for traffic. It's just not ready yet. And it's going to be a little bit.
Okay. And so we also received, again, we're not going to get into it, but we received correspondence, just for the record, so other board members, if you haven't been made aware, that the abutters We got correspondence from Brandon Kelly, the CEO and president, I think, of the budding property or representative thereof. They've got a copy of it, of the traffic study. So I think they have some questions and concerns that they're potentially going to investigate on their own. They may even hire someone on their own to give them another perspective. So just for board members' awareness, the abutter is also involved in this and has a keen interest with their existing building and business over there. So we'll wait to hear on those. And Aaron, we did receive correspondences, just sort of follow up from the last hearing. You had reached out to the town assessor because there was some question about, trying to remember now. Was it to compare or clarify
Yeah, it was
current
to,
use or proposed, if it were to stay in office or an R&D to compare?
yeah, I think that was from Greg asking, if we did get lab R&D and office space, what would be the comparison in tax revenue compared to this new development? And then I had Victor look into that, and he put, his thoughts into it as well in the letter.
So I think that it got stuck in my mailbox. Unless Gail can correct me, I'm not sure all the board members got it, so I forwarded it today. So I don't want to go into it. I'm just acknowledging for the record because it's new correspondence from our last hearing. I'd ask the board members to take a look at that. I think we also asked them to weigh in on some of the rates from the fiscal impact, the previous aspect of the study. There were some questions on some of the valuations and so forth, and he did weigh in on that too. So again, I would just ask the board members to consider that, and if there's any comments or questions, maybe we take it up at the next hearing. I want to give them an opportunity to at least digest what was received, so they can prepare for any questions or have a conversation with you as well. So, but it is new correspondence. I just want to call it out for the record. It is in the file, and we can touch on it next time if board members so choose, right? Okay. So with that, anything final, board members, before I open it up? Okay, so at this time, we'll open up the public testimony. Again, the focus of this evening was this economic impact study, and we'd like to have the conversation and comments or questions sort of specific to that for now. And with that, if there's anyone who has a comment or question, please raise your hand in the Zoom room and I will call on you in order. Not seeing any hands yet, so if you're unable to raise your hand or your video's not active waving, please come off mute and let me know. Otherwise, going once, going twice. All right, we'll close with the public testimony for the evening. So
Crazy the amount of stuff people have to say, but nobody speaks when it's important.
Maybe the economic impact study wasn't, maybe they didn't have as many questions as they might have for other topics, but anyway. So what's next, Brian?
We would like to do site civil on September 8th. We think we're ready to move forward on that. Because traffic won't be ready.
And Brian, how much more site civil do we need to do that we haven't done already? We did landscaping and drainage and all those type of things. What's new?
Matt, you want to?
So we had received early in the process a letter from Bill Renault addressing some concerns for the redevelopment of the property as it relates to civil issues. We've addressed all of those concerns, and we wanted to, show the changes that were implemented as a result of that.
And those are changes we haven't seen on plans yet, Matt?
That's correct.
Oh, okay.
Yes, we want to get those into the record. It shouldn't take long.
Okay. Board members, is there anything else you think we'd like to hear from this? See, I'm looking at the punch list.
No, I think our biggest thing, Mr. Chairman, is waiting for TAC. That's still the elephant in the room.
Brian, is that meeting set yet or not? Or are they still doing it?
Not yet, Amy. There is no meeting because they're still providing information back and forth. Matt Keeley from VHB, who's the town's peer review consultant with TAC, and Scott Thornton, who's our consultant. So we're still working with them to get them the information that they need.
Brian, if you could make the board aware of when that meeting happens, that would be appreciated.
The TAC meeting, Tom?
Yeah, please.
I will. Certainly.
Given that, Mr. Chairman, I move that we continue
I-
this to September 8th with the conversation being civil and site.
Second.
Any discussion on the motion?
I just had something real quick, but I can say it after we.
All right, and that doesn't relate to this motion or this. Okay,
Not really.
okay. All in favor, Chip,
Yes.
Amy,
Yes.
Jim,
Yes.
Tom,
Yes.
and I vote yes. Okay. So thank you for the updates tonight and that report, and we'll see you in a few weeks.
Thank you.
Greg, want to give us some info that I want to make?
Yeah, I just wanted, I mean, it's semi-related to that project, but it's not anything for the public hearing. And I should say I speak only for myself here when I say this, but a few weeks ago, there was a letter in the Daily Item that was published that spoke of perceived corruption in the ZBA process. I'm not going to go into the substance of that letter, but I do want to address one of the issues. Corruption isn't just a dirty word or a bad habit that you can throw around. Corruption's a crime, and a serious one. This board and all other boards actually are filled by volunteer Wakefield residents who do put in a lot of work. We're required to take regular training and understand our obligations under the state laws. And in my experience, I think we all take these pretty seriously. Also, as a member of the Massachusetts Bar and someone who relies on an ethical reputation for my career, and as a person who takes great pride in my personal integrity, I can't stand by while someone I can't idly stand by while someone passively accuses me, and as a matter of fact, the entire board in which I serve, of a crime without reference to real evidence. I volunteered to serve in the ZBA to make sure that Wakefield is the best community that it can be for all. I think we can have civil disagreements on that, and that's fine, on what the best community means. I hope we can all agree, though, that accusing an entire board of being corrupt and therefore have committed a crime based merely on personal perception shouldn't be tolerated. If someone does have real evidence that a crime's been committed, I would encourage that person to go to the authorities and ensure that we are held to the highest standards of integrity. But I think we also need to choose our words carefully before selling the reputation and the integrity of an entire board based merely on someone's personal perception. I don't want to dwell on the issue, but I felt it, as a naval officer and as a lawyer, I felt it important to get that point out there that you can't just throw around accusations of a crime based on personal perception.
That was in the item? Somebody?
Yeah.
Do you have a copy of it? I'd love to read that.
You can find it. It's all over
Okay.
the place.
Okay. Thank you. That's
Thank
really
you for-
disheartening. Yeah.
Thank you for saying something, Greg, because it went to the heart of what I've done for a lot of years too. So you said it a lot better than I could have. I would have taken a personal attack on the person.
I've been dwelling on it for a while. Like I said, as a former, naval
Yeah,
officer.
no,
who was
you
drilled
said
into
it a
me
lot
as
better
lawyer.
than I could have. So
I can't believe I missed it.
thank you.
This is one loop you're out of, Amy.
Apparently, I thought I was in all the loops.
And not to dwell on it too, but I mean, I would even, say for Brian's aspect, for both sides of the committee here, personal accusations of a crime.
Greg, you're absolutely right. None of us are in this for personal gain in any way. We volunteer, and some of us have been here for a long time. And we work with passion. If you don't like our passion, that's a different thing. But hey, I don't believe any member in this board basically should be given those terms basically on a whole or individually. So, but You know, we work our hard. We're volunteers, basically. And that's it, period. Thank you.
So I apologize for taking up more time, but for both sides, applicants and I felt that important to touch on it.
Thanks, Greg. Okay. Thank you, Greg. All right, with that, we are going to transition from our continued hearings to our new hearings this evening. The first one on the agenda is 22-5 and 22-6, Andrew Bosco and Jennifer Bosco, TRS, at 6 Cristofaro Street.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. That's my hearing. Michael McCarthy, representing Andrew and Jennifer Bosco as trustees. Andrew, I filed this application two ways, two different applications, Mr. Chairman. One is for a simple finding, which I believe is all we need. I don't think we need to take up the variance application. I filed that as a backstop. So I don't think that that'll come up tonight. Any need for relief under that. This is a single family home at 6 Cristofaro Street. The Boscos have lived there for about 10 years. Their desire here is to add an addition to the existing single family home, which sits on a non-conforming lot. You'll see from, if I can share it, the site plan. Can you see that?
Yes, we can.
Okay, great. The zoning requirement table in the upper left-hand corner. The lot is about 6,890 square feet. We are in a single residence district, so you'll see the 12,000 square foot requirement, which makes it non-conforming. It's also non-conforming with respect to the frontage and therefore the lot width, because it is a square lot, about 80 feet of frontage. We also have a non-conforming structure. You'll see from the table and you'll see from the layout on the site plan that on the right side is about a setback of 9 feet, and on the left side, 10.14 feet. I'll defer in a moment to Henry Arnudo. I hope I say that right, Henry, who's the architect who's here with us tonight, who's also submitted his architecturals and his elevations. But the desire is to extend the house on both sides in a manner that does not encroach any further than the existing nonconformity. So the scope of the relief, I believe, is under 19050A, which is essentially that there is no new nonconformity. I believe that to be the case here. So that's it. The Boscos did meet with their abutters. I did submit abutter letters to the board. They met with the left side abutter, the right side abutter, the abutter to the rear, and the abutter across Cristofaro Street. And you have their letters. 3 express particular support, and the other says no concerns. I'll try to bring up, if I can here, the site plan. I mean the architecturals. See how that goes. This. Share. Okay. I don't really see it. Let me just try doing this. I don't have it. I'll see if Matt can, Henry can do it as part of his presentation. But that's essentially it from the legal perspective, Mr. Chairman. We're just looking for a finding under 19050 that we're not adding any new nonconformities, in the alternative under 19050B that any new nonconformity is not substantially more detrimental to the neighborhood than the existing nonconformity. With that, and with your permission, I'll defer to Henry to talk about the design of the proposed addition.
Okay, thanks, Mike.
Yeah.
Good evening, folks. Henry Arnaudo at HPA Design. We've been hired by Andrew and Jennifer to design their addition. They have a house that's currently 1,536 square feet. We're looking to add on another 1,200 or so square feet. without going beyond, as Mike mentioned, beyond the sides towards number 4 and number 8. And we want to expand the family room, create a better mudroom, sacrifice the garage for some storage area, and look to add a master bedroom suite on the 2nd floor. We worked pretty hard at this. Typically, over the last 35 years, houses like this would typically be torn down because it's very difficult to, it's cost prohibitive, and there are some features in this house that simply won't have that newer houses have. 2-car garages, 9-foot ceilings. Just, the direction has been to bigger and splashier houses, as I'm sure you have seen. So to the Bosco's credit, they pushed back on when I suggested tearing the house down and build a new house within the setbacks. And we designed a house that's an addition that's tasteful. It doesn't overwhelm the existing mass of the house. We've added some features that complement the house. We were sensitive to the neighbors in terms of windows, in terms of massing. We're not asking for the roof line to be any higher than the existing home. And that's what we're presenting tonight.
Thanks, Henry. Can Jen and I speak for just a moment also? Hi, everybody. I'm Andrew Bosco. This is my wife, Jennifer, so you guys can see us both. So we're the homeowners of 6 Cristofaro. We, having attended the last 2 hours and 45 minutes, genuinely want to say to everybody, thank you for everything that you do. And thank you for hearing our application tonight. I think that Michael and Henry covered it pretty well. The only thing Jen and I wanted to add is just a little background for our reasons to apply to move forward with this project. As Mike said, we've been Wakefield residents on Cristofaro Street for 10 years. We love the town, we love the location, the neighborhood, and the school system, among many other things. And as time has gone on, we realized we needed some additional space in the house for our growing family. Our roots are here, and at this point, the only reasonable option for us is to put the addition on our house so that we can have the house grow along with us. The long-term plan is for us to continue to live in this house and raise our family for many years to come. And for, with that said, one of the most important points we wanted to make to the board, as Henry has already mentioned, is that the design we're bringing before you tonight for approval is truly the result of months-long design effort, working with Henry and his team, with Jen and I's intent being to develop a design that keeps the existing home intact, along with its character and how it relates to the character of the neighborhood, and also provides the additional needed space for the family. We aim to do all this in a manner that truly does respect the neighborhood, and it was really never an option for us unless we could accomplish this in a fashion that really looks like it's original to the house and doesn't seem out of place. And all that said, we're very happy with how it's turned out to this point. We think all the efforts have paid off and the boxes have been checked. And we do look forward to your decision and moving forward with the next steps of the process. Thank you.
Okay, thank you for those additional comments.
That's
Board
essentially the presentation, Mr. Chairman. So we'll be happy to answer any questions or try to address any concerns that the board members or the public may have.
Okay.
Mike, could you put up the site plan again and just go through the zoning requirements?
Sure.
It was a little small for my bad eyes.
Yeah, no, I hear you. Sorry. Can you see it?
Yeah, maybe just zoom in a little bit on that area.
Absolutely. So we have the existing 2-family house. You have a bulkhead here. There's a new bulkhead going in here, an extension of the porch. We're holding that 10.14 feet there. There's also work over on the right side, the garage, where we have 9 feet existing, and we're proposing to extend a little bit, but not to go any closer than 9 feet. I know that there was in this area There was some, with the existing home, and I would let Henry talk, or Andrew talk more directly about this, but the window alignment was changed so that there was no conflict with the proximity of the existing house, although that doesn't change with the windows looking into other people's windows. Maybe Henry, you want to comment on that?
Yeah, or Mike, I can,
yeah, sure, Andrew.
You know, one of the, you know, as I mentioned, the months-long process of going back and forth with Henry and his team. So one of the things that we did on that side of the house originally, there's a bathroom up on that corner right about where the cursor is there. Originally, we had a window on the side of the house, but we'd actually turned it off to the back of the house so that we wouldn't have any sight lines. And that's something that, as we met with our abutter there, Miss Emmett, we had talked about that and looked outside at the side of the house and kind of described how that was gonna go together. But that was something intentionally that we did do.
But that's it, Chip. We don't go any closer to the sideline than is existing. So there's
So
no.
Mike, did you go to Ben with this prior to him becoming able to approve these by himself?
No, with the lot being the way it was, this was in process, Chip, before that vote was taken. So we went along, we figured this was the best way to go.
Because I'm trying to figure out.
Ben did not comment negatively on this.
Yeah, because I was gonna say, you're not exasperating the
No, we're not.
conformity in any way that I can see. I was concerned about the 9 foot, but now I see it's in place of the garage.
Right. Yeah, no, we're not
Yeah.
creating a new non-conformity. I think this is a better way to go in any event on this one, but no, there was no negative feedback at all.
Okay, thank you.
Mike?
Yes.
If I'm looking at this right, the left-hand abutter has quite an extension, a 2-story extension on the back of their house. Am I correct?
Andrew or Henry, why don't you answer that?
Yes, that's correct.
All right, so their building basically already has a similar addition to what you're proposing here.
It does, I know that.
That's accurate.
Yeah, so it obviously, I mean, it looks like all the houses on that street were probably built by the same builder. And somewhere along the line in the last number of years, that addition has been off the back. And you're just following sort of a pattern that's showing up on the street, really. So just for the board's edification, basically, this is not uncommon on the street at this point, at least in this particular area.
That's correct.
Yep.
Okay, thank you.
Like, I don't think it comes into play, but I just want to clarify with that existing house, the Emmett's on the right side where the 9-foot setback. Do we happen to know the distance, or from the scale of this drawing, their distance from their lot line?
I don't. Henry, do you have
I mean, I can scale it off.
I'm just curious because there is an aspect of the bylaw that says you got to be 20 feet from abutting properties. So you're not going any closer. I don't think it's triggered, right? It's that note 10 in the table 2.
Right, it shouldn't be, because we're not exasperating the non-conformity.
Right. Exactly. I just want to make sure that, because he did file a variance, doesn't think he needs it, but I'm just, if he were, that
It looks like it's, I mean, visually it looks greater than the 9 feet, so.
It scales 10 feet, but but there's no guarantee that the existing house, the Emmett property, is exactly as shown on the site plan.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Number one, and number two, we're not relying at all on the variance, and wouldn't anticipate withdrawing that, depending on.
I concur on the scale.
Okay, so it's close, but yeah, you're not encroaching anymore. If you were, then it'd be a different conversation, but you're not. I just want to be clear because it is on the drawing and it is a different aspect that isn't in the table per se. It's that note 10 that has come up a couple times recently in other projects. So we did hear from other town boards, just while board members might consider other questions or comments. So the fire chief reviewed the plan, has no objections. Concom, it's not, they've determined it is not in their jurisdiction, so won't require further review. And the town engineer did offer a comment about I&I fee. Mike, I don't know if you've seen the memo, but that's something I think to be addressed with them. It's
Right.
not something that would necessarily be part of a potential finding on our part, but something to be addressed maybe when they file for permit or their construction. And we do have copies of the letters, as you stated, from the various abutters there in the file. From the DeCourcy's, Mr. Noonan, Sullivan, and it looks like the Emmett. So those are in the record, board members, as well, to substantiate what's been stated. So with that, that's all the evidence and the materials we've received. Any other comments, questions from board members before we open it up? Okay, at this time, we'll open up the public testimony. If anyone has a comment or question, please raise your hand in the Zoom meeting. Or if you're unable to share screen, come off mute and let me know. Okay, not seeing any hand waving or hands in the Zoom participant list. We'll close out the public testimony. So Mike, I assume you want to, request to withdraw the variance, and we can sort of motion that would be separate from the finding itself, right?
Correct. Yeah, I'll make that request.
Why don't we vote on the finding and then he can really.
That I would prefer, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So in that essence, Mr. Chairman, I move that we find, based on the evidence presented to us this evening, that there is no greater nonconformity than currently exists at 6 Cristoforo Street, and that we find that it is not more detrimental to the neighborhood. And I don't think we need to do the suspenders, do we?
You just did,
Well,
and that's fine.
But
if someone were to find that as an intensification, we're also finding that it's not substantially more detrimental. So, and that's both parts of 19050A. So,
I guess I just get so used to saying the B part.
yeah. So, motion's been made.
Second.
Thank you. Any discussion on the motion? All right, regular voting members and Tom, Chip,
Yes.
Amy,
Yes.
Jim,
Yes.
Tom,
Yes.
and I vote yes. All right, so finding is approved unanimously. Next.
That's great. Thank you very much.
Thank you, everybody.
Yes, thank Thank you.
Hold on.
Sorry.
Do you want to request the withdrawal?
Oh,
of the
I
variance?
will request the withdrawal on the variance, please.
Do we want to do it, Mike? Give me the term. Without prejudice.
Without prejudice.
I move that we withdraw the variance request without prejudice.
Second.
Do any discussion on that motion? Same voting members, Chip,
Yes.
Amy,
Yes.
Jim,
Yes.
Tom,
Yes.
and I vote yes. Okay, so that's unanimous. The variance is off the table and withdrawn. The finding is granted. And Mr. and Mrs. Bosco, good luck to you.
Thank you.
Thanks again,
Good luck with
everybody.
your project.
Good luck.
Okay,
Thank you.
thanks for your patience tonight.
Yeah, of course. Thanks
Right.
again.
Right.
Okay, next new hearing, 22-7 Wakefield Donuts, Inc. at 518 Salem Street. Wakefield Donuts, thought it was Dunkin' Donuts.
Hi, good evening, everyone. Can you all hear me?
Yes, we can. Welcome.
Fantastic. My name is David Lucas. I'm an attorney in Melrose. I represent Wakefield Donuts, Inc., which is the corporate entity that owns the Dunkin' Donuts restaurant on Salem Street. I'm sure you're all familiar with it. One of the officers of that company should be on here, who is Alex DePietro. Oh, there is? Yep. Hey, Alex. So if you were able to review the application, what's going on now is just about every 10 years, Dunkin' Brands requires that, and that's what it's called, Dunkin' Brands, requires that their restaurants sort of redo their branding, or at least they update it or review it. And what's going on with Dunkin' restaurants around the country right now is their biggest change is they're changing the name from Dunkin' Donuts to just Dunkin' because that's cooler, apparently.
No, it's because their donuts are horrible.
No, the donuts are great. Are you kidding me? The coffee's horrible.
Ah,
Wow. Poor
I
Alex.
know I was gonna take a beating. Come on.
Yeah.
All right,
The
all right.
Dunkin',
Let's
the
keep
Dunkin'
going.
Dark,
Late.
Alex, the Dunkin'
is
Dark
recorded.
is excellent. The Dunkin' Dark is very good.
By the way, just to clear the air, I'm a franchisee of Dunkin' Donuts. I am not the brand, so unfortunately, I don't get to make a lot of those big decisions.
Excuse me. So there's nothing really being done to the physical characteristics of the lot or the building. The only change to the exterior of the building is they would like to put a second drive-through window for the purposes of emergency flow of customers. There have been times when during the very, very peak times, there's just a standing line of customers at that window. If somebody orders a big order that just can't be done right there at the window, they have to pull up. It backs up cars. And what they'd like to do is have a second window for the times that that happens so that you can, for example, as some restaurants have, pay at the first window, pick up your stuff at the second window. Under normal circumstances, they don't need to do that. But since they are redoing the building, that is one of the recommendations that Dunkin' Brands is asking of all their restaurants. Let me just give you a quick rundown, and then I can sort of go through it on the plans with you if you have them.
We may have a copy in front of us, but do you have anything you can share on the screen?
Absolutely.
Again, for the benefit of any members of the public who might be here, they wouldn't have a copy.
Oh, okay. Yep. Let's see here.
While he's doing that, if anybody remembers, Jim, remember McDonald's had a issue with the drive up and the noise and neighbors. We never had an issue here with that, right?
no. What we had, if you remember, was a drive-through to the abutters property behind them.
Right.
That's
right.
right.
But we had no noise or issues like that here.
No. It was if you remember also, that whole area had a bus.
The ice cream place.
The bus place, the ice cream place, the dry cleaners place. But the biggest issue was the guy behind and dealing with his access.
Yeah, I remember that now.
Exactly right. This was about a 3-year process. This was a 3-year hearing when this went through between the board, the planning board, and the conservation commission, because there is a tiny sliver. So anyway, what I'm showing you right now, this is a site plan of the existing conditions, which really are not changing. But you can see the restaurant obviously right here in the center. It's a pretty elaborate traffic pattern to drive through. That has not changed, nor is it changing. You can come in off Salem Street here. You have to go a good distance through the property to get to where the drive-through is. Now, let me scroll up here. I want to show you another top-down view right here. Now, this more accurately shows the changes. I'm going to try to zoom it out just a little. I have a little bit of trouble. All right. As you can see, one of the additions is going to be some heightened traffic paint patterns on the ground. These aren't raised, but this is just for drivers to better understand what the pattern is if you're trying to drive through, what the pattern is if you're trying to use the drive-through, as you can see me following here. I would say that the only major change, if you want to call it a major change, other than the additional optional window right here, is over here on the right-hand side of your screen is the current menu board. This is sort of an old-fashioned change it as you go menu board.
So David, right where that car, it's the opposite. So it's right across, right where that car is.
Oh, here, I'm sorry. Oh, this is the, you're right. That's the other sign. I apologize. Thanks, Alex, very much. Yeah, right here. This is where the menu board is. So if you drive through here, you stop here to see what it is you want. These are going to be modernized probably all over the area for Dunkin' Donuts restaurants. And it's going to become a digital board with a slight canopy over it to not only protect the board, but basically protect you if you have your window open and you're trying to speak into the speaker to make your order. And I can show you, that is right here, but I can show you a different screen to give you a better idea of what the digital board looks like.
So, Mr. Lucas, if I can stop you right there, do we have a copy of any of this?
You have a copy of everything except for, I apologize, what I have in front of my screen right now. I'd be happy to email it to the board.
We don't, Dave, we have a roll of drawings and a written text, but we do not have any digital PDFs of what he's showing.
Never mind, I had to get the roll out of the box of files.
You have no digitals?
No.
No, not yet, but it was the roll I didn't see. I was looking in the file folder and the application. Thank you. I got the roll now.
This screen you see right now, which is only a description of the digital menu board. This you do not have.
Okay.
It's very basic, as you can see. Obviously, the advantage of this is you put up a digital board like this, you can change it remotely. If they're out of something, we don't have any blueberry donuts today, they can take it right off. You don't have to drive up to the window and find out that that's the case. There's a lot of franchises, not just Dunkin' Donuts, are doing this now, especially with gas stations. Back to where I was here. So I described for you the menu board change. Everything else is really these traffic patterns. Mr. DePietro, is this portion right here, that's where the height limit bar is?
Yeah.
Okay, so what's going to go here is essentially a sign, and I can find that for you as well.
There's a current height bar. It's just replacing the current height bar with a newer Duncanized, right there on the bottom right.
There you go.
Right. It was also on your last sheet. Yeah.
Yeah.
If you look at right here, actually, since I have it in front of me, this is the change in signage. So this Dunkin' Donuts already has black signs with gold leaf. I'm going to scroll way down. Actually, I'll show you here. I got a better idea, if you don't mind. Can you still see my screen? Okay.
Yep.
So if you look at, this is obviously the existing site.
No, we're seeing a site plan. No, we're not seeing.
We're seeing an interior plan.
Yeah.
Okay. I'm not sure how to change what I'm sharing to what I just pulled up.
Get one of the PDFs on the top.
No, I wanted to show you something on the web. I had the Google map up of what the building looks like now, but that's all right. I can just show you on here.
Yeah, under sharing, you can change what you're sharing, but it's up to you.
Here. I wanted to show you what the building, as it sits right now, like a photo of it from Google, but this shows you the different views of it. So this sign right now is black with gold lettering and it says Dunkin' Donuts. It's just going to say Dunkin'. It'll say drive-through. On the west elevation, or is it the east elevation? I'm sorry. The east elevation, there is another Dunkin' Donuts sign. It'll say Dunkin'. There it is.
So are these signs the same size as the sign that's there now?
Yeah, yes. Is that correct, Mr. DePietro? I'm pretty sure they're the exact same signs.
Yeah. Ultimately, I'd love to keep the original signage. It's just a pure swap out based on the name change.
Okay. So it's black with gold letters. It's the same size.
Yep.
Correct.
And the sign on the east or west, basically towards the parking, there's one there now or not?
There is.
Yep.
Okay. There's a street sign that is a standing sign on the ground.
Yes.
There's this sign right here on the north side of the building.
Right.
And there's the sign on the east side of the building right there.
Okay.
Same location, same size, same design, just changing the lettering, unfortunately.
All right. Thank you.
Yep. And the only other difference that you'll see is right now it's a very light gray building, and the siding would be painted to be a darker gray as you see in front of you now. The brick that is there now will stay the same. Mr. DePietro, correct me if I'm wrong, but this tan will stay the same?
Yeah, ultimately they're bringing in a new kind of warmer feel of palette colors that will be kind of, you'll feel it as you go into the building as well. And this is kind of what their colonial version of that palette looks like essentially.
Yeah, and this was a lot of discussion basically that we wanted to stay in a colonial venue as opposed to the regular, you know, Dunkin' Donut basically building out there. So that was a lot of discussion. So keeping this aspect and not going to the sort of standard, you know, look is important. It was important then, and I still think it's important today.
And what about the colors on the signs and your digital board? What's happening there?
So currently the height bar is brown. That'll change to white. It's a better feel. It's got a better. We have them in some other locations, and it's a better. The life of the white lives a little bit better than the brown. That seems to look a little.
Is that a real orange?
Say that one more time.
Is that a real orange that's going to be there?
It is. That's part of that is it's an additional height requirement past the height bar that allows you to, it protects you from rain, but it's also orange because it'll set it apart as, hey, this is a low bridge, if you will, so that people don't run through and then run through the curtains on the overpass on the building as well. So it's meant to catch your attention and also kind of fit with on brand.
Remember, there's a fence between this and the gas station too.
Yep.
Right, the whole property's fenced.
That's correct.
I was going to bring the fence actually up. Is the fence going to be repaired?
Yes.
Okay.
Desperately needs it.
Yeah.
Over the years, we found out that it wasn't installed as best as it should be. So as part of this, it's going to be the same fence, going to repair all the broken panels and make sure that they're adequately and appropriately cemented into the ground so that we don't lose panels. But just one note on this as well, the additional window isn't really an additional window. It's really taking the place and allowing customers to push up. But it is a busy location, as I'm sure you know if you visited it. This should, in theory, based on some of the layout changes that we made inside and with this kind of setup, it should be able to move traffic much faster and alleviate some of the pressure on the drive-through to be able to push those large orders, those people who are ordering 2-3 dozen donuts and, a box of Joe or something that can slide up while we continue to service traffic.
Is this, there was mentioned basically pay at one and pick up at the other, or are these both pickups?
No, so the intention of the first window is that for any ordinary, everyday customer, you'll go through the first window and you'll continue to move. The second window, which exists today, which is where cars are paying and getting serviced today, the intention of that is any large orders, so they don't sit and hold up the traffic from continuing to move. They can slide up having paid already and just collect the large order when it's ready.
Oh, so they can swing out a line and go around the car that's holding everybody up.
Exactly.
Sort of, yeah, exactly.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's pretty much it. Because the design of this, and Jim brought it up, how important it was in 2003 when this first came before you, that you wanted to make it have a colonial looking feeling to it. That's actually most of the Dunkin' Donuts in New England have similar requirements. But you're right, back then they had the big giant pink, bubble letters. Right? And most, any town around here did not want to see that. So now they've sort of taken a turn and they're embracing the local look. And that's why, in this case, they're actually requiring the gold leaf lettering.
Yeah, and part of what you'll see is to Attorney Lucas's point is we're really embracing our heritage. We'll be bringing the bakery case up front when you walk in. Really taking on that feel to really chime into our heritage and be a real bakery, real restaurant, real donut shop. And hopefully hopefully someone will eat the donuts. Apparently we don't have many fans.
The donuts are great. I can't believe you guys don't like the donuts. You're not seeing most of the changes that are going to happen here because they're really not under the purview of this board. They're under the building inspector. It's all internal changes. The internal layout of the restaurant is going to be very much modernized. The use won't change. The capacity won't change. If anything, there might be, I think Alex was telling me it might limit it by 2 or 3 seats, but that's it. So you're not going to have an extension of the use or anything like that. What else would you like to hear from me? I'll tell you one other thing. What you see right here, that's where the current exterior sign is, the street sign, so to speak. Again, the size is not changing. It's still the same exterior lighting on it, just the wording.
I'm fine. Personally, I'm fine with this because it's keeping the same size of the sign. I understand that the marketing of the signage basically changed because you're getting away from the word donut because you're actually expanded over time as to what your venue is. So I understand that, but I'm fine with everything you're proposing personally. Even if we were to start all over again, basically the signage basically is compliance with the normal signs. But since we've already approved this back a while ago and you're staying within that, again, I'm fine. I'm also fine with the color.
It is relatively simple change. I think the building commissioner, because the design of this was such an important condition when it was first approved, he felt it necessary to come in front of the board for modification, and we're fine doing that.
Yeah, I'm just looking at the application, trying to understand exactly what you filed for, because it says application is made for modification of unknown decision.
I know. I couldn't find a case number anywhere.
Oh, well. Well, we have a copy of the decision. I just don't know what's.
Yes, correct.
Or
And that's the
whatever,
reported decision.
Right. So, yeah, it seems reasonable that you'd request a modification to the existing special permit. Because I assume there were plans and signage in that original decision, and you're proposing to change them. So, I think that's what's before us as a request to modify that existing special permit.
Exactly.
So, board members, just to complete any correspondence from the town engineer, no comments. From the fire chief, existing sprinkler fire alarm systems must be maintained. So, see, that's going to happen with any changes you make to the interior or exterior. Concom, the location of the project does place it within the Concom jurisdiction. However, the scope of the work consisting of renovating the interior, adding second drive up and converting menu board, new signage and painting will not trigger a review. So I assume you knew that already, that you weren't having to file with them.
Correct.
Just for the record, so other board members knew that.
I had not seen that letter, so thank you.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Anything else, board members? Okay. So we'll open it up to public testimony at this time. If any member of the public wishes to ask a question or make a comment, please raise your hand. Fewer and fewer members here as the night draws on, but I'm seeing no hands being raised, so we'll close it to public testimony.
Mr. Chairman, based on the presentation this evening, I move that we grant the modification of the special permit previously issued to this property.
Second.
Thank you. Any discussion on the motion? Okay, stamping the plans. Gail will be happy to hear that. Greg, you want to go at this one?
Sure, I think I can handle
it. To say yes.
We'll see.
All in favor? Chip?
Yes.
Amy,
Yes.
Jim,
Yes.
Greg,
Yes.
and I vote yes. That is unanimous. All right, so permit has been modified. If you can just get us electronic copies of the plans, including the one you said was not in our file. And I'll need a paper copy of it as well in some form or fashion, just so I can stamp it as part of these final plans.
Should I, you want me to email those to Gail Conroy?
Yes, please.
Terrific. And should I also forward my draft decision to Gail?
Yes, please.
Very good.
And you can send it to me too. There's a board email address on our website if you haven't found that already.
Oh,
Like
excellent.
DOA at Wakefield. Every board has an email address, so you can send it there and CC Gail, and then I'll see that as well.
Very good.
And we'll work offline on that.
Excellent. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, very much. Appreciate it.
All right.
Come see us when we open.
Just avoid the coffee.
No, the coffee, I love the coffee.
Stop.
I hate coffee.
Damn.
Thanks.
All right. Have a good night. Thanks for your
Have a good
patience.
I'll talk to you, Alex.
What is next, board members? All right, so we took care of the other matters. Except 1188, yep, they're gonna come back. That one's done, that one's done. Okay. So guess what we didn't do in July, and Gail alertly reminded me.
I thought that if you don't do it, it just continues. It
rolls
just
over.
automatically renews.
I
Laugh
think
now.
I think I read that somewhere too.
Someone's not gonna be laughing a year from now. Laugh now, if you must. So at this point, formally, we need to nominate and appoint a new chair and clerk to the board for the next fiscal year, if you will. We typically do this in July, but I think we ran pretty late that night and just didn't get to it. So
Do we nominate Greg now this year?
technically, it's going to be difficult where he's still technically an alternate.
Yeah, alternate member. Not sure I have time.
Well, maybe a year from now when everybody's grown up.
We'll see.
No, I mean, I'll state that I think Amy and Dave do a great job, but as one that's thinking about when his tenure will be up, and I know Jim probably is, and I know Dave probably is, we got to start thinking about who's the next and who's going to start taking the lead. And we kind of always went from clerk to chair. So I don't know if Amy's interested in becoming the chair at some point.
Don't look at me.
It is a lot of work.
Right. No, I have a lot on my
I
plate.
commend Dave for everything he does, because I
Right.
think he does a great job. But, you know, we got to start thinking about the leadership of the future. So, you know, and I'm, you know, we kind of make the comment that other people have to make motions and stuff like that. I think we need to start doing it, guys. You know, other people have to become equally as involved, invested as Dave has been, so that, God forbid, you know, we don't want him to retire, but if he decides to, that we have somebody that can step in, because we're a good board, and a lot of that is from the leadership. So with that, I nominate Dave and Amy to stay on in the leadership as they have in the past.
Is Dave thinking about stepping back or stepping out?
We'll know in a year, won't we?
Term ends April 2023. So
yeah.
Are we 23 or 22? Oh, no, we are 23.
Yeah.
Okay.
So, but I would agree with Chip's sentiment that I wouldn't want to wait till then and then my term ends and we don't know who's the next chair is going to be. I would like to have a succession plan that maybe someone steps into that role next year so that, you know, I just step aside as chair, but I'm still on until my term either ends or I change my mind, but at least there's somebody already in that role performing those duties so that, you know, it doesn't go to the town council and now there's an open chair seat and potentially some new member gets voted right into the chair. That just doesn't seem like the right way to go for this board with the experience we already have. So we do need to just think about that.
We
transition.
appoint the chair though, so I don't think it's the chair's seat necessarily. If the
No, but
chair's
it'll be a full
gone, we
member
can
seat.
reappoint.
But
We
we
can
have three
reappoint.
alternate members who are equally.
That would be
qualified
real
to-
interesting. Could an alternate member be the chair?
I don't know.
I don't know. We'd have to
I
ask.
think
town
that would be
council.
grounds that have never been discussed before.
No,
Right.
well, but it's not an alternate member, basically. It's a full member. And we
No,
already
no,
know.
no, no,
we're
Dave, no,
alternates.
what I'm saying, Jim, is right now, if Dave stepped aside,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
To me, it would be Mike or Greg or somebody that would, I've always thought, you know, Dave's done a great job not as a lawyer,
Yeah,
but I think it's really good to have lawyers either in that position or right next to that position.
and
Because
you
they're
and I,
very helpful. And
you
right
and I-
now, we have alternate members that are lawyers, nobody that's a regular member.
yeah, and you and I have gone through a number of chairs that have been lawyers, basically, in the past.
Right. Or we've had Falvey or Greg or Mike or people to speak to the legal side of things,
Yep,
which
yep.
is great.
Absolutely necessary.
Because if we did it, if I did it, we'd be getting sued left and right.
And I twice as often.
So, yeah, I mean, just something to think about. We don't have to decide that tonight. There's a motion on the floor to keep the current positions as stated, as Chip stated, but I just, yeah, everyone should just consider so that we can have a plan, maybe
Mhm.
sometime next year. So-
Greg, this means no more pregnancies.
It would also mean becoming a full member, which so.
Right, which
Yeah.
means one of us has to leave, Greg,
So
so.
I don't think, well, two of you have to leave for me, or three of you, no, all
Three.
three.
Tom, Mike, and you.
Yeah. I'm the
So
last.
maybe what we'll do is
Just have a mass exodus.
Jim, Dave, and I will all leave at the same time, and good luck to y'all.
Well, no, it raises another interesting prospect, and I don't know that if there's precedence for it, is can a regular member and an alternate member swap roles? I don't think they can just swap. It would have to go through an appointment process, but do it in
That would
such a way that
cause-
alternate could then be a regular member and then become chair and be
That would-
appointed or
That
voted
would
in.
cause so many letters to the item.
Well, it's just,
What are they doing?
well, how do you guys ever become regular members unless three of us leave?
Right, we would have to leave.
And knowing now, you would have to leave, and we
And
have to
you'd
make
have to
sure
be
we apply for
appointed.
the position.
Right.
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 Or maybe the permanent member becomes an alternate member.
That's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
How do you almost swap roles in?
Yeah, but it would all have to go through town council.
We'll probably just have to put a request in for it. I don't see why they wouldn't say that. If Dave was saying, I still want to stay on the board, but I want to go as an alternate, I'm gonna,
I think it's more interesting, can the chair be an alternate?
yeah.
Because all it has to do is voting. It has no bearing on
Mm,
how he runs a meeting, right?
Right, they just
that's
wouldn't
the
vote.
chair's role.
mm.
It
But they
just
do
means
vote,
he
but they
couldn't vote.
typically do vote. So, yeah, it brings up interesting questions that I'm happy to
We have
have
to ask Mullen.
with town council. Yeah, absolutely.
Well,
All right.
I think we have to ask Greg's wife first.
I was gonna say this, just, yeah.
I'll
Hey, the
second
answer
Chip's,
would be no right now, I'm sure of that.
Yeah, I'll nominate Tom.
I'll second Chip's motion for now, so we at least can do
Thank you,
that.
Tom.
But actually, what I would say, Dave, what would be helpful for the alternate members is we don't know what cases we're voting on. If we kind of had an idea of what was happening and that we could make a motion, as an alternate, it's a little bit awkward to just be the one to make a motion, right? So you're kind of in a position where you're not even know if you're voting on a case. So I agree that we should all be making more motions, and it should, we got to learn how to do it. And what you sent out worked. When Chip was late, I think Greg and I both did it. That language that you sent was helpful, but not knowing if you're on a case or not, it makes it a little bit more hard. So I don't know
Understood.
if you.
It's
I
just
would
something
be
to
happy
think
to
about. It's not a,
rotate new
I
hearings.
don't take that as a complaint. I'm just saying that it's just the nature of it.
So, Tom, what I could easily do at the beginning of a meeting would be to excuse myself from any new hearings. And I would be happy to do those on the findings, and trust me, the $10 we get doesn't make a difference. So on the findings and new hearings, and just cherry pick, I wouldn't want to give up my seat on the CCF ones or the big ones, but on the kind of normal new stuff, I'll just start recusing. And one night it will be Greg, one night it will be you, and we'll just go through a rotation and start picking new hearings where you guys can you're going to be on.
No, that's what I mean, especially because we don't want the complicated ones at first anyway.
Yeah.
Right.
No, and I'd be willing to step back on those as well. So, the houses and some of the, even the one we just did with Dunkin' Donut. I mean, I can still speak, but I don't have to vote.
No, that institutional.
Oh,
knowledge of having-
no. If you're not on, you don't speak. Let's set some ground rules right now.
Then I'll
tell you which ones you're on.
Okay, moving right along, getting things back on the rails. There's been a motion and second, and any discussion on the motion to keep Amy and myself in the current positions?
I don't think you can take the vote.
Well,
No,
that
you're
goes to
probably
the
right.
can a non-voting member be the chair?
I
So he can administer the vote probably.
I can administer the vote, but I can't vote. So the motion's been made and seconded by other people. So I guess all those in favor, Chip,
Yes.
Tom,
Yes.
Jim.
Yeah, oh, yes. Sorry, I fell asleep for a few minutes. I'm the older member here, so I'm allowed.
Greg.
Yes,
Mike.
falling asleep as Chip's.
All right, so by the non-interested parties, Amy, you and I. Go
Tag team back again.
Congratulations.
Yeah.
Thanks.
For another year. All right. A couple more matters. Gail?
Oh, just a reminder to take the ethics test. If you need the, I can send it to you. And Greg, you're the only one that's up to date.
From that speech tonight, you better be.
Yeah.
Can you send it to us, Gail?
It's already been determined that I'm not ethical, so.
Yeah, I know. And it's the conflict of interest, not the ethical thing.
Right.
Yeah.
I think I took it again, no?
Yeah, I was gonna say, in everyone's defense, it took me like 3 tries for it to actually process at the end.
But Gail, I took it when I was sworn in and I handed the certificate in to the clerk.
Me too.
When I was sworn in.
And
This
time, okay, because I had them look it up and they only came up with Greg as having it. I'll have them look again. And if you know you did it, I mean, probably wouldn't even let you do it again if you.
Will you just send the link out again?
Yeah, I will.
So Gail, that'll be different from the form I had to fill out when I ran for school committee, right?
Oh, did you take that?
Well, I had to fill out a form, it was like a conflict of interest form.
Yeah, that'd be a specific one, Amy. You need to take.
Yeah.
Second one,
It's
okay.
the, yeah.
Okay.
It's the one from,
It's the state, from the state.
Oh, okay.
You
All
do
right.
it online.
Yeah.
You can't go
The
wrong.
pain in the ass one, yeah, okay.
I did it and handed it in. But
You did too, Mike? Okay.
yeah.
So
I'll
if
have
you
it
have a
double-
record of it, if you guys have some
That's
sort
what
of
I'm looking right
PDF
now.
or.
Yeah,
if you
I'm
can
pretty
find it-
sure I haven't.
No, I think I'm one at a time. I think I'm due, and I think a couple of others are due. Gail confirmed that, yes, but if you do have a record of something that you've done within 2 years, send it to Gail if you can, and then she
And
can
I'll give
confirm
it
with the
to
town
them.
clerk, correct? So there may be just paperwork crossed hands and didn't get into them, so, okay, well, thank you. And let's just get that done in due course here, so that we're all caught up. All right, item 6, approval minutes of July 14th.
I move that we approve the minutes from July 14th.
Second,
Any discussion? All in favor, Chip,
Yes.
Amy,
yes.
Jim,
Yes.
Tom,
Yes.
Greg,
Yes.
and Mike.
Yes.
All right, thank you. Well done, Gail.
Thank you.
Anything else, clerk? Comments, anything remaining before we adjourn?
I just wanted to send my condolences out again to the Beard family. Dick served on our board for a long time. And I enjoyed working with him. I know that you guys all did too, and you guys worked with him for a long time. So just wanted to send my condolences out to him and that he's in our hearts.
Thank you, Amy. Here, here.
Yep.
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 We do miss his pointer and his
Yes.
wisdom.
I brought that up the other night in our meeting.
Did they
And-
pass it on to you?
No, we should have got it. I'm sad. That's the only thing I'm sad about never being chair with him is because I never got a gavel.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
I can hand one off to you.
Yeah, it
Next
wouldn't be the
year.
same, Dave. It just wouldn't be the same.
Well, he made it. The one I have is.
I
from
know.
him. All right. Anything else, board?
No.
All right, then.
Believe it or not, I have nothing else to say.
Wow.
Thank God, I moved to adjourn quickly before he thinks of something.
Hurry up,
comment?
hurry up.
Except that
All
parking
in favor,
garage
Chip?
should be built.
Oh my God.
Amy,
Somehow you got that back up there.
all in favor to adjourn? Chip,
Yes.
Amy,
Yes.
Jim,
Yes.
Tom,
Yes.
Greg,
Yes.
and Mike,
Yes.
and I too. All right. Thanks, everyone, for your time.